Can everyone see the screen okay? Does the lighting work? You good? Eyes adjusting to this. Awesome.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. It's good to be back. I know I have met most of you, and it's good to be here again. And we're excited to get this project going and to get kicked off. I'm going to move to the... Yep. Let's go to introductions real quick. So just a reminder, my name is Angela Watts. I'm the director of the Organizational Change and Training Practice at Collaborative Solutions. I've been with Collaborative and in the Workday ecosystem almost 7 years now. Worked in a lot in the higher ed space, University of Southern California, UT Austin, University of Chicago, where I've met love, UNLV, Grand Canyon University, lots of different places. So excited to be here and to share that knowledge. On this project, I will be your change architect. I will be partnering that role with Tanya Gray. Tanya will lead most of the session today. And Love Anderson will be your HCM workstream lead from an OC&T perspective. Tomorrow I'll do financials and we'll introduce you to your lead there as well. But really thrilled to be here today. You guys can tell a bit about your backgrounds, just for anybody that hasn't met you yet.
Yeah, I'm Love Anderson, and I've been here a couple times already, so glad to be back. Like Angela said, I used to work at the University of Chicago when we were doing the implementation of Workday, and then we redid it all and did shared services implementation, so that was really fun. And since then, I've been at Collaborative doing more implementations in higher ed. So I've been at University Texas Austin and UNLV. So I'm really excited to bring higher ed experience over 10 years and really love being in the higher ed environment and just really excited to be here with you.
Awesome. And my name is Tanya Gray. As Angela mentioned, I'm going to serve as the change architect on this project alongside Angela. I've been with Collaborative almost 2 years. And before coming to Collaborative, I worked in higher education for about 7 years. I worked for a large community college system in the state of Texas. Since coming to Collaborative, I have had the opportunity to work on higher ed projects, UT Austin namely. So very excited to be back here. I love higher ed. I always say I feel like it's in my blood just starting out my career in higher ed. Right. And we have another couple seats up here too if you're looking for a place to sit. All right, actually I'm going to back up to the agenda really quick. So here's where we're at today. So we're here doing a 101 course focusing today on HCM. For those of you that might be joining us again tomorrow, we're going to be focusing more on the financial side. So we want to start off by going around and just doing some introductions within the room. I know so this is my first time here. I know Love and Angela have been here a couple times. I know you all probably know each other, but I would love to get to know you as well. We're going to start out after introductions with some core concepts, so basic concepts of Workday. Those of you who are going to come back tomorrow, we're going to repeat a couple of those concepts tomorrow. Basic navigation. So we want to just show you Workday. We want to show you what it looks like, how you navigate around the system, what are the key things that you're going to need to know when you start living in Workday every day that you're going to be using. And then we're going to get into really some core HCM business processes. We're really just scratching the surface today, so we're going to talk specifically about hiring employees. We're going to talk about terminating, and we're going to talk about what Workday calls the change job process, which is the concept of transferring, promoting, demoting employees once they are already hired at Washington University. And then we will, of course, have Q&A at the end as well. We want this to be an interactive session, so we want you to be able to ask questions as we go through anything that, at any time, if we're maybe going too fast or if you've got questions on a particular screen or about a particular concept, we're happy to answer those questions for you. So starting out, let's just go around the room if you don't mind. Let us know your name, your role at Washington University. If you're going to be a part of the project team, we'd love to know what your role will be on the project. And then I'd love to know your exposure to Workday. Is this going to be your very first time seeing it? Were you involved in the sales process? Have you used Workday in the past? Just any kind of prior experience you've had with Workday. So if you don't mind, do you want to start here?
So I'm the project manager at med school.
Oh, great.
Need a Workday.
Awesome.
So Shahad, student becomes liaison. My experience with Workday is that I was at Cornell when Workday was implemented as one of the first in higher education.
Great. Awesome. Wonderful.
We use it thus also as a user.
Yeah. Great. Great.
I'm Hank Weber, Executive Vice Chancellor at the University, executive sponsor for this project. And my experience, I've been very involved in the review process of selecting Workday, but that's my only experience.
Great.
And I spent 22 years at the University of Chicago.
Great.
And survived.
Wonderful. Wonderful. We're glad you're here.
I'm Mark Wilmer. I'm the medical school lead for this project. My experience, I was part of the selection, and I was also able to help with the design of our chart of accounts for Workday, but that's really about it.
Great.
And I'm Kathleen Sash. I'm the finance lead for the project, and I was part of the selection and the chart of accounts straw model for the project, and I've been to several demos.
Great. Wonderful.
I'm Richard Payton. I'm the governance lead for the project, and I was involved with the selection process.
Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Amy Kweskin. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the university and also on the executive committee, the finance rep for that committee. I've been involved at the selection process, kind of at the higher level from the executive team. I did have the opportunity when we were looking at Workday Student to actually do a test run with my laptop and sit and kind of go through a little bit on
Great.
Student. So I've seen some of the screens and what they look like, but not in any way an expert. So looking forward to this session.
Great.
I'm Ellen Rostand. For 2 more weeks, I'm Assistant Vice Chancellor for Public Affairs. After that, I'll be our Change in Communications lead for the project. And this is my first exposure to the actual Workday product.
Wonderful. We're glad you're here.
Hi, I'm Susan Glassmeyer. I work with Alumni Development. I sit on the executive committee. Very interested in HCM, but also tomorrow finance because the system that I work with primarily will need to connect to Workday with all the financial transactions we have for development. And this will be my first time seeing the product.
Great.
She used to work for the University of Chicago too.
Oh,
But I have a sense to leave and get away from those winters before you.
You also have a University of Chicago degree, which I think
Oh, great.
as does Ellen,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which indicates obviously a level of intellectual sophistication I also don't have.
You just sit next to the food, yeah.
Hi, I'm Roger Scotland. I'm the technology lead
Okay.
for the project, and I was involved with the sales process.
Wonderful.
I'm Sue Ozak, University Registrar. I'm the student lead on the project. I was involved in the selection process for Workday and was involved when we were part of the Student Strategic Advisor program and went to a couple of conferences there and played in the tenants. So I've got a little bit of experience, but it's been a couple of years, so I'm interested to see how it's evolved.
Great. Wonderful.
Mark Carlton, business process lead for the program, and I participated in the selection.
Great.
Hi, I'm Linda Hack. I'm the HR lead on the project. I'm part of the selection process, and I've had several demos and been able to kind of navigate around a little bit on Workday Rising and that. So,
Good.
again, nowhere near being able to.
Sure. Great. And I know we skipped a couple people in the back.
Hi, I'm Beth Lee. I'm the Deputy Program Manager for the MyDay program. I was involved in the selection as well as previously when we had vendors come on site for various demos throughout the years. So.
Great. Wonderful.
I'm Tom Krause. I'm with Collaborative. I'm the engagement manager for the financials project.
That's wonderful. Perfect timing.
But I don't know anything about Workday.
Not at all. All right, so I think we can put maybe one more chair, maybe up here, and then there's one right back there for you. Feel free to take that one.
That's okay, I'm going to stay put.
And not to put you on the spot right away as you walk in, but we were just doing introductions, so do you mind just letting us know who you are and maybe where you work here at Washington University, what your role is going to be on the project?
Happy to. My dad was a minister who said, "Be also ready," so this is just
perfect. You came prepared.
So I'm Dedrick Carter, I'm the Vice Chancellor for Operations and Technology Transfer. That's who I am and what I do.
Awesome. And do you have any experience with Workday prior to today?
I don't have any experience with Workday.
Yeah. Have you had?
I work all day, but that's it.
I don't know.
In my couple years of doing this, I've never actually heard that one, so that was good. And do you want to just let us know who you are and where you work here?
I'm Gail Chandler, Vice Chancellor for Human Resources.
Great. Wonderful. Well, we're so glad you all are here today. We heard a couple of you say that you were part of the selection process, that you've seen quite a few demos. Some of you have already had your hands on the system, which is awesome. Again, today we're going to be doing demos. Some of it might be repetitive from the basic navigation, so we definitely want you to ask some questions. Please, if there's anything that you maybe saw in the past that you have questions about, or as we're going through these demos, specifically when we get into the transactions and talk through the hire process, we definitely want to take down your questions. Right. So we're going to start out start with some core concepts. So foundational to Workday. You are going to hear these repeated time and time again, probably between now and when we go live, and then even after that. Some of these are going to be part of your everyday vocabulary when it comes to Workday, so this is not going to be the first time that we talk about them. And the ones we're going to talk about today specifically, supervisory organizations, which is essentially how we're going to structure the management hierarchy here at Washington University. We're going to talk about security. So how does Workday define security? How is security set up and what's important there? Various worker types, specifically worker types that might be used here in higher education. What kind of staffing models do we have within Workday? So what are your options when it comes to how we're going to staff various organizations? And then business processes. So really how we're going to get from point A to point B during a hire process or a termination process. So starting with supervisory organizations, and how many have heard about supervisory orgs? Okay, good, I'm glad. Like I said, this is not going to be the second time. It's going to be, or maybe it is the second time, but it's not going to be the last time. We're going to talk about these over and over again. Supervisory orgs are really the foundational structure of the data in Workday, specifically when we're talking about HR. This is where you get your who reports to whom structure. So if you think about, starting at the top and trickling down, you can really view it as an org chart as you see on the right-hand side. So this is how we're grouping employees into management hierarchies. Employees are hired directly into those supervisory organizations. So we'll talk a little bit about staffing models in just a minute. But when we're hiring workers, one of the first things we need to do is determine what supervisory org they're going to be hired into. That determines who their hiring manager is going to be, along with some various other attributes of the position that we can define. And if needed, supervisory organizations can have unique requirements for different business processes. We'll talk about business processes in a little while as well. But if you think about something like a hire or a termination, you might have supervisory organizations that are very unique and that require maybe specific routing or specific rules that determine how we hire people into that organization. Okay. So staffing models. Workday offers two different staffing models, and these are determined on the supervisory organization. So when we build your supervisory organization structure, or later on down the road as you are reorging or new departments or new organizations need to be formed, at the time you form those organizations, you have to determine a staffing model. There can only be one, so you choose either position management or job management, and it can't change. Right, so you're choosing one staffing model per supervisory organization, and they could all be the same. But once you actually define that staffing model, it can't change as you go down the road.
Could you explain the difference between the two of them?
Yes, sir. Yep. So position management requires that every person hired has their own position. So you are going to build a vacant position, generally, within that supervisory organization, and then you're going to hire a worker into it. We use the analogy of a chair a lot. So if you think about this conference room and all the chairs, so we're going to, this is one supervisory organization, and everybody in a chair is in a position. This is my position. If I leave the organization, so I transfer to another organization, or I terminate and leave the college or the university, then my position is vacant. Right, so now we can go ahead and hire, we can post this job, and we can hire into this position. If all of the seats are full, all of the chairs in this conference room are full, and we need to hire somebody, we need to build a position first. We can't just hire somebody without a position. Does that make sense? Also, when you think about position management, two people can't sit in the same seat. So if you think about it logically, that's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to have two people sitting in the same chair. Now, there is a concept of position overlap where if you've got somebody leaving, you know that they're leaving, you can have two people in the same position for a set amount of time. But again, thinking about it logically, we could have two people sitting in a chair maybe for a little while, but it's uncomfortable. We want to make sure we get somebody out and that person exists in that seat by themselves. Yes, sir?
How do you deal with job sharing where you actually do have two people in the same position?
You would have two separate positions generally. So they could be identical, right? They could have the same everything, right? The same hiring manager, the same comp grade, the same job profile or job title, all of the above could be identical, but you would just build two positions. Now, or another scenario, which actually a great segue, into the second staffing model, which is job management. Job management offers you a little bit more flexibility. So in organizations where you are hiring the same type of worker time and time again, maybe rolling hiring, the example I can think of that might be particular for you all is maybe student workers, where essentially their position, or if you think about the attributes of their job, so maybe their compensation, their job title, things like that, are all the same. Job management allows you to set those restrictions, as Workday calls it, so saying, this is going to be the job, essentially the job profile, the location, hiring manager, all of that. You can set that on the entire organization and hire as many people as you want. Don't need to create those vacant positions. You can just constantly be hiring for them. Does that make sense?
I think what helped is also point out what position management brings you.
Yes.
So from being able to track the history of the workers, where they're at, and how
Not the workers, the position history.
All of the above, yep. So as soon as you create that position, yes, you can track the history. So when was it created, who sat in that seat, who was in that position for what period of time, then maybe they vacated that position, somebody else came in. You can make changes, you can edit positions. When those changes are being made, you can of course track that and how those changes are being made. Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, and I think it also, a decision we'll have to make is whether or not we tie it to the budget fully, like do the commitment accounting to the fullest, where a department or a hiring manager can actually create the position until they go through a process, whether it's in Workday or outside of Workday, to say yes, the money's available. Where today, and you correct me if I'm wrong, we operate more like job management, where there isn't, this tracking of positions, and the commitment accounting is probably done more just through a conversation,
Well, and typically when people go to Workday, part of the reason they do that is to embrace the position management.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the most commonly used.
Yep.
If I understand correctly, it also helps us untangle what are conflicting training requirements at an individual level. Whereas today, we stop at a job title level, and that isn't accurate for us.
So you can add we're talking like qualifications, like education requirements and all of that. You can track that on a position if you choose to as well. Yep, absolutely.
And security and reporting and things absolutely matter.
Yes, and we'll talk about security in just a minute, but you're absolutely right. But as you're talking about creating positions, a lot of security attached to that too. So you all get to decide who can create positions. And then based on who's creating them, what kind of approval flow do they go through? So do we need a cost center approver, which would be like a finance type approver, so over a cost center? Does it always need to start with an HR? Can it start with, maybe a human resources partner or manager within a different college or school? All of that can be decided as well.
And it's a great way would be to track how many approvals it went through and when it was sent back for what reasons, if it's all done in Workday, and you'll be able to see what accounts were used and when accounts got changed because maybe funding got allocated to something else. If you do it outside of Workday, then you're kind of losing that visibility. And bringing it to Workday and putting those approvals, you can also see where it's stuck, who's sitting on it and not approving it, and why the position is not moving forward for hiring.
But it is a bit of pre-work, I think, compared to what happens today if I just decide to hire a person. And from what I understood from an earlier conversation, and I'm not sure if you were on the phone, I always forget who's on the phone, but this is an area that's probably one of our largest change management efforts from an education standpoint.
Absolutely, and that's not uncommon.
Right.
Absolutely. Yep. And what you're talking, and again, that difference between job management and position management. So it sounds like we might be operating more today on that job management where we just hire people, or similar to a job management principle where we're, as soon as we know a need, then we can hire people into that organization or department without that structure that's placed around it, which position management would bring you.
Is the commitment in future versions of Workday going to still be to offer both?
Yes. So they used to have 3 models. They did away with one, maybe 2.5 years ago or so. But these will remain because there are some organizations who do function with job management, particularly if you think in like a retail space. When they hire seasonal workers, they just hire them into a job management field.
That's a little different than what we thought we heard, I think, a couple weeks ago.
The job management maybe sunsetted at some point.
Right. My last question is, can you mix these 2 models?
So
instead of choosing one?
you can mix them within your university as a whole, but it has to be tied to a supervisory organization. So you can think, some people like to think of supervisory organizations as departments. So it's all of your individuals that are going to report up to a manager, another individual. All of those are going to report up to another, and we'll see that when we demo. You'll be able to see a supervisory organization. So those organizations each have to be assigned a staffing model, and they can only have one. So you can mix it within the university, or maybe within a specific school or college, but you can't mix it within those specific organizations.
Like you could do all your student hires, since we know that their jobs constantly change and they move around a lot, or they take multiple jobs for job management, so you don't have to go through that process of creating a position to chair every single time a student moves. But for staff positions or faculty positions, you could do position management, and you could kind of decide where it makes sense to do job management and where it makes sense to do position management. And then based on that, determine how change management needs to be addressed for those groups and training needs and things like that, and then highlighting similarities and differences. Because there's some concepts here people will be able to understand, like that applies to both, and where the differences are creating a position, what the process go through. But those like decisions would be made looking at each worker type that you have, what makes sense for them when it comes to hiring.
Yep.
Can you, when folks get asked questions, can you, my collaborative folks, can you repeat the question? Because your guys are mic'd, and so we won't be able to hear.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, absolutely.
So, I'm a little confused. So, let's look at our faculty. What are our, on the one hand, in our current system, there's grades for faculty, assistant, associate, full professor.
Ranks. The ranks.
And probably distinguished service, university professor or distinguished service.
Right, distinguished titles.
Distinguished titles. How does that work? I think that's a system that works well for us. Would that fit into both of these?
It's a question that we've not gotten fully, I think, explored, how you handle multiple jobs and then how you handle titles, essentially, that are not jobs, not separate jobs. So we haven't really, I think, talked through that.
So the question is, do the ranks that the current faculty have and the distinguished honors, can that be tracked in Workday? Yeah, and the answer is yes on the academic appointment, so I'll let Love speak to that. But
So your faculty could hold a position of a faculty, like a assistant professor or something, and then if they have an appointment as a distinguished faculty or something, then they would have an appointment in addition to their position. And then you would track their appointments. I've seen at the University of Chicago, for example, appointments would track through the provost office, where some of their position information might have gone through HR and would have also been through the provost office. But on the appointment side, you're tracking one thing, looking at their progress to tenure track, maybe they're non-tenure right now and they're working towards their tenure.
Okay.
And then on the position, you're more tracking salaries and things like that. Does that make sense? Clarifies?
Will we see any of that functionality today or tomorrow?
the academic appointments?
It was not planned. We can.
We could certainly stage it tonight and do it tomorrow.
Yeah, we could stage it.
We could show academic
That would be
appointments.
helpful.
Sure, absolutely. I think you also mentioned something, 2 positions, if somebody works in 2 departments, 2 jobs, something like that, because Workday definitely allows you that, because you're going to have student workers, that's going to be population that will work multiple jobs.
But they're not the only ones.
There will be staff too that work 2 jobs. Yeah, and faculty too have multiple dual appointments in different departments sometimes, and there's a Workday allows you to do that and track them, whether it's in the same department or in a different department that they have 2 appointments or 2 jobs.
So coming off of staffing models, kind of a nice little segue into worker types. So worker types, another core feature of Workday, a core concept that you'll hear over and over. So we just have some examples of some worker types. So employee and contingent worker are the 2 worker types that Workday delivers. And then within there, you've got your subtypes. So you've got within employee, you've got regular, temporary. So temporary workers, regular would be a typical staff person. You can have academic potentially, which would include your tenure, non-tenure, appointment track, non-appointment track. And we can, build that out further, whatever's going to meet your needs. And then administrative. So this could be your CFO, your CIO, CHRO. So just different ways to track your employees within Workday. And then contingent worker, those would be typically like your contract workers, contractors, agencies. So those that are coming in through a temp agency, generally those are going to be considered contingent workers. They can have their own hire processes that are essentially unique based on condition rules, and we'll talk about that a little bit in just a little bit.
Maybe one comment real quick in case anyone else is wondering. Non-employed fellows and postdocs and grad students who receive stipends. From what we understand, we can probably come up with a way to handle them and where they don't look like an employee, but we can still pay a stipend.
Yep, absolutely. I think we've got a couple chairs in the back.
You're fine.
We're good? Okay.
Do you have a hard copy of the slide deck?
We do not have a hard copy of the slide deck now. This is all being recorded, and so there will be a recording with the slide deck so that it is getting shared, so it will be passed around.
Grab your chairs.
Yeah, we can move the chairs.
I'm pretty good. I got those frog eyes.
We don't want to put you on the spot, but we all did go around and do introductions. So would you all like to say who you are and where within the university you work and what your role is on the Workday project, MyDay project, I should say?
No, once you say your account, I'll take
Or just take
seat by Tom.
Rick Stanton, Chief Troublemaker.
Perfect.
Yeshua.
Medical school.
I'm okay with Chief Troublemaker. And you, sir, do you mind introducing yourself?
I'm Scott Taylor. I'm the program director.
Great. Well, we're glad you're here. All right, so security. So how does Workday structure security and what's important to know? Security drives what you see and do in Workday. So you'll see in just a minute, we're going to hop into the Workday tenant, the Workday environment, and you'll get to see what somebody's homepage might look like, and that's going to change based on their security role in Workday. So it really drives what you can see, so even thinking about reporting, the data you have access to, and also the processes that you can initiate or that you might be a part of. And routing, so business process routing. We talked a little bit earlier about how maybe a hire process might look a little bit different based on the supervisory organization. So there might be specific rules that we need to build in to route to certain, either certain people within the university for approvals based on either the type of worker or maybe that organization that person is being hired into. And again, all of that is based on security. So the system, once we get security set up, the system will know that you hold this role in Workday on this organization, so you automatically are going to need to get that approval step within that process. Okay, and again, it's going to drive what you can view on reports. So we might have multiple security roles that have access to a specific report. Maybe there are certain individuals that have access to workers' compensation data, whereas others might only have access to their name and their job title. Others might have access to some of their personal information, like their date of birth, things like that.
The system have a pretty good internal audit, keeping track of who is accessing what?
Yes, everything is tracked in Workday, yep. Absolutely. Now, who has access to that audit is obviously going to be a smaller group, but yep, that's all based on security as well.
So if people are browsing where they don't belong, you could have a systematic one report that might catch that and deal with it appropriately.
Do you know if that can be an automated report, like browsing data, as far as what people are looking at, or would it have to be something that you go in and look at?
No, I think you'd have to go in and look at the access to it, but when you're building it, you're building access based on security roles, so there really shouldn't ever be an occasion where somebody's seeing something that they shouldn't have access to, because you're assigning
If
roles.
business needs to see something which opens up a field of view that's pretty broad, and I don't need to hunt around in the field, I need to do my business.
Right.
If I'm looking broad, same as HIPAA, I mean, I'm running off the health record. You need to be in a patient record, you need access to the patient record.
Right.
You don't need to be browsing through all patient records. So if we give you access to fields you need to do your job, are we able to systematically, as we are with HIPAA, look at who's looking at stuff they don't need to be looking at, as opposed to it's only on a one-off basis. So there are no tools to sort of audit security questions on information access. what you're
So
saying.
if they do run reports, so they perform some kind of task or action on it, then we could definitely track that so-and-so logged in and requested this report, they ran that report, it was generated because they're the ones who requested, you'll be able to see that. If it's more just like, like on Google, you browse it, but you don't actually like click the button, say go run it, that would be, it's much harder to track that.
Okay.
But it shouldn't really allow someone to have access to something that's confidential if they really shouldn't be clicking or going there. So when we're first looking at the group, who should have access to this X data, we're really looking at, can we block someone who maybe only needs to have access to this versus that? Well, if they do need to have access to that, but there's a certain area where they don't, can we prevent them from going there?
But potentially, security is going to be a big deal for us.
Yeah, sure.
And figuring that's going to be a real problem. And I may need to see the salaries in medical oncology for a joint grant with another department, and I need to see that. But I don't need to see all 140 faculty in there.
Yep.
Right? Now, you don't know who I'm going to see, so I'll get access to them. And maybe everyone else at the medical school, what you're saying is I got to limit who you can see somehow, or else I can't systematically figure out people who are browsing around.
Right, you can't check just what people are looking at if they have access to look at it, only if they've run a report or taken an action.
But if they run a report, that you'd be able to.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's another way also to track what a worker's doing, are they busy actually doing?
If a person's given access, though, to a cost center, they have whatever view of that for the whole cost center. If it's personal data, it's for the whole cost center, right? Or not?
It depends on what kind of data. So
Yeah.
we're asking if somebody has access to a cost center, do they have access to everything within that? It would depend, because everything is secured separately. So for example, who has, obviously it's a big one, who has access to compensation. So you can secure that multiple ways. So somebody might see what cost center they're reporting to, but not see that worker's compensation amount. So everything within Workday, every individual module is secured separately. So behind the scenes in the tenant, every group has its own security.
But I assume if you can see one faculty member's salary in a department, you can see all faculty members' salaries in the department.
That was my question.
Depending on how it's configured, yes. All of that is configurable. So it's just to look at what you want. Do you want them to have access to everybody with just one supervisory org, or the cascades all the way down? Do you want access to the whole chain? So whatever you ask for, that's how it'll be configured.
Because you could have an...
So the challenge is transactionally. People need access to the information. They have important business needs for which seeing certain information is important. It's going to be compensation, and it's going to be compensation for everything other than the CFU, because faculty cross and do collaborative things. And the question is, once I have that access, if I abuse the privilege, I'm not doing it because I have a business need, what are our ability to monitor and act on people who are inappropriately hunting around? Gee, I met Joe Smith last week, what does he make? Right?
Right.
And I'm trying to understand what you can and can't do. So I hear you, we can layer in security, but if we layer in enough security, we'll look as ugly as we look today. So I'm trying to understand smarter ways to manage information access so we can give access as needed and have tools that let us find the abusers.
Right, and that's what you'll work with when you're doing the design sessions with your architect workshops with your functional leads. They will give you advice on how best to set it up, what they've seen in the past, what they've seen work well. So that's what we'll do during the architect workshop sessions.
So one of the roles I want to play today is to identify issues that we need to come back to and how we come back to them. I would like Linda to, at the appropriate time, work with Scott so that it's on the schedule, your proposal to the executive committee after working with Miguel on how we set up security. I'd like to have a benchmark against Yale and Rochester and USC, or two of them. We'll pick a couple of our, because we have exactly the same issues in every public research university. That's it. So what are the options? What do you recommend we do? And let's,
yeah, and I think we have to determine if there's a step before that we have to have confirmation on before we can do the security. In other words, your supervisory work structure, which will then dictate your security.
So
and
what's
so on.
going to be really important is that the executive committee knows when it's got to make this decision.
Right.
And has some time to make it, and has a good review from the staff. So if you tell us that you can make it, we don't have to make this until February, and you're going to give us something on January 1st and give us 6 weeks, that's fine. Or if you say it's October, give us something in September.
Tell us at least a month before you really want it.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you know that. I should say, just so everybody knows my bias, I, along with a bunch of other people in this room, salaries are available in about 5 seconds by looking at the tax return of Washington University. And as far as I can tell, that's never caused an issue. It's a little lagged.
I was gonna say it's lagged, and I don't know how many people actually access it, so.
Go to Gold Star.
No, but I'm
the
just saying.
harder issue is,
So I think-
is Joe works over here and looks over there at Mary and wants to look up Mary's salary because he thinks he works as hard as Mary is, and then there are issues around that. There are legitimate reasons to look that are different than the reason to browse.
Right.
And it's not just about the highest paid folks.
Yeah, I agree with that. In fact, in many cases, it's least about the highest paid folks, because they don't think.
We will have to think through that carefully.
But I know I
You
should
don't
make
want
at
to
least
create 1,000
20%
security
like you
roles.
Exactly.
Right.
That's why I'm looking
We
for
wanna think
systematic ways
strategically.
to catch the problem, not systematic ways to stop it from ever happening.
All right, so we have keep going.
Perfect. All right, well, we're still going to talk about security for a little bit longer. So Workday defines security as either user-based or role-based, and these are the two big ones. So if you go back to, a little bit ago when we were talking about positions, we were talking about the concept of a chair, and I'm going to start with role-based security. So role-based security essentially means that that security role is tied to the actual position, not the worker. So in that example of this being a supervisory organization and I was sitting in this position, I've left the position, I've either terminated or I've transferred to another supervisory organization. Whoever comes and then fills my position, they're going to take all of the security that comes with it.
Does that assume position management's in place?
Yes, thank you. That assumes position management is in place. Yep, absolutely. Again, that role-based security is tied to the position. The position is tied to that organization. So for example, a manager is a role-based security group typically tied to that supervisory organization by way of position. So we're going to say this position right here is the manager. I've left. Somebody else is going to come fill it. They're now the manager of that supervisory organization.
Which is very huge for us because today we do this manually and on an individual basis.
Yes.
And it's unmanageable.
Yeah.
And it's also hard to know when somebody's being terminated, what access to quickly terminate, especially if it's not a friendly termination, that you need to really quickly cut things loose. We have the same problem I've seen at a couple other institutions where, yes, that's definitely with Workday would be much easier. And onboarding is the same thing. If it's on the position manager and when somebody starts, that's already built in. You can even build trainings that they need to go through that, and all of that could be tracked then.
So user-based security.
So in a typical big install of a university, how many roles are you creating?
I'm not sure if I can.
Yeah, I don't know if I
500
can
roles,
answer
1,000
that.
roles.
Well, there's a
20
lot
roles.
that's delivered by Workday, and so what we would look at is what are the delivered roles and how do we need to manipulate them to fit WashU's needs. Are there custom security groups created? Often, yes, but I would say that the custom ones are probably, what would you say, Tom, like 10 to 20? Yeah, it's a smaller number of custom because there's so much is delivered that then you can sort of manipulate from within the system. So if you have an academic HR partner versus a regular HR partner, how are those roles different? All of that is delivered in Workday.
If you have somebody in multiple roles, they just fill all those roles?
Yes.
Yep.
There's another layer of security too, the segment security that goes into that too, that you can further ratchet things down.
And there's intersecting security groups. I mean, this is more meant to be more high level, but there are different ways you can do it. That if you need somebody who's in this group, but you need them to see this piece of cross section, you can do an intersecting security group to get them access just to that one piece of information that they're supposed to be seeing.
So in a typical client, how big is the staff that just manages the security and the security roles?
That just manages.
That's managing just those questions, because I imagine the organization won't be static. So as it moves over time, what's your experience in other places? How many people are staffing the management of security roles?
So USC has not gone to financials yet, so it's just HCM and all of that filled out, recruiting, all of that. Their staff that manages the actual Workday system and making sure people have the proper access. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 of them that manage that.
That helps, thanks.
Sure.
Would I be correct in assuming that with HCM, we decide role-based security is the road we want to go? Does that also apply then when we do finance and student as well?
Yeah, and
it's the same.
So you'll use both. So you'll use role-based, user-based, these other types of security. It's all of that can be used system-wide.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if I do student, and we are going to do role-based in student. And I just want to make sure that
you'll have user-based as well.
So if HR and finance go a different track, does that set the stage for what happens with student? I guess is my question.
So these aren't like tracks, like we were talking about position management, job management, where you got to choose one. These you'll use all of them.
Great.
Yep, absolutely. So and that's a good segue. So user-based security is assigned to the person. So we were just talking about like security administrators. So that is a user-based role. So it's not tied to my chair, my position, it's tied to me. So if I leave this position and I go take another position with the organization, I am still a security administrator. I still have that user-based role. Now it can be removed and it can be put on somebody else at any time, but it stays with the worker. So these are typically your administrator type roles. They're a lot more locked down as far as numbers of people, whereas your role-based, I mean, you're going to have hundreds of managers, right? You're probably going to have quite a few, HR partners, or however we're going to define them. Whereas a user-based, again, typically administrative. So like an HR administrator who would be responsible for setup and maintenance of Workday. So smaller group of people.
Or think your payroll admin or your benefits admin, that they would have access to everything throughout the university as the payroll administrator. That's going to be a very small group of people that are in that role, where you could have payroll partners and other things that are more role-based.
Yep, and again, interchangeable. So, or not interchangeable, but you will use both types of security throughout all of your various systems. So just some examples.
Sorry to keep mentioning. Supervisory organization is a Workday definition, defined word that we can't change?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a concept that I thought we probably could dwell a little further on, that maybe there'll be a natural point to do that.
Well, I think when we get into demo, we'll certainly go through showing what a supervisory organization looks like. It is the foundation of everything that's built in Workday, is the supervisory org. Yeah.
So we were mentioning there's some Workday delivered security roles. So these are a couple within HR, and then of course you've got your manager role. So the security that is back behind this, as far as what these people can do and see, or what these roles can do and see, that is all determined by you all. But again, typical roles that are delivered within HCM. So HR analysts. So these individuals would be performing HR reporting, specific functions for assigned organizations. So again, assigned on position, but also assigned within supervisory organizations. HR partner, you could typically think of this more of like an HR manager if you have that role here. They're going to perform some management type functions for assigned organizations. Usually they have some approval authority within different HR related business processes. And then HR administrator, which we talked about already a little bit, these are the individuals who are really creating, maintaining your organizational structure, reporting on all HR operational data regardless of organization. So a lot broader of security when it comes to visibility. And then manager, again, these are going to be assigned to the supervisory organization. They could have business processes, maybe approval steps that route to them. They usually have some visibility into the team members within their organization. The depth of that visibility, again, is going to be up to what we decide, or up to what you all decide.
So as you're explaining this, it sounds like these are people in the unit. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yes.
Not necessarily in human resources. This is how
people in the units interact with the system to communicate with human resources?
Correct. It could be either. So I guess it would depend a little bit on how HR is structured. So if you have like HR managers or HR associates, whatever that title would be for your institution, that live within your different units, then yes, they would be an HR partner, maybe an HR analyst. A manager would be somebody that lives within a unit. HR administrator would generally live within HR. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I had a related question to that, because in some one of the things we're working towards, for example, in our center area, is to go to a shared services model for some of the HR, and I know LaGale does that, I think also on the med school side. Can you have, but we won't be there with our schools yet, so, and they may choose in other areas not to go that route. Does it have the ability to have different models set up so that in one area I can say, this organization does all the HR functions for every department, versus I may still have another group that's doing their own. Does it have that ability?
Yes, I think you would set that up on the specific process level. So your business processes would route to specific individuals within that unit or within that department, whereas other organizations might follow a business process that routes to central HR or whatever it might be. That makes sense.
You take care of that through the processes, not through necessarily the people.
I think that would probably be the cleanest way to do that.
Yeah, it would be set up as a business process with conditional rules that say if it's coming from X college, it goes here. If it's coming from anywhere else, it goes there. Or let's say if it's a faculty employee type, it routes this direction. If it's a staff worker, it routes this direction. So all of that can be set up within the business processes themselves.
Okay. Thanks.
I mean, you want to be careful not to get so many rules that it's hard to maintain, right? So those are the things that we'll talk through during Architect to make sure we're being thoughtful about how we're using these rules and when we want to do it, just from a maintenance perspective as well. But it certainly has the ability to do that.
But I could be an HR analyst, and I could be sitting in a shared hub group, and I could be doing work for these units that have been assigned to me, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
So you could only get like part of the university, let's say, work, and then the other units, it goes to somebody else, the HR analyst that sits in their department. So we could set up if it's employee type student from X department and goes here versus employee from this department goes there.
Well, the other thing to think about is you can have multiple people holding the same roles. So it might route to, if you've got a group of 3 people who work together, maybe it routes to all 3 of their inboxes because they all have the same security, they're all assigned at the same supervisory org. Whichever one of them completes the task first, it disappears from all 3 inboxes. But you can have people jointly working together as well.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes,
And typically in shared services models, you'll have
Yes.
multiple HR analysts or HR partners that are processing, and you could divide and say, if you see alphabetical order, you could say employee by last name, you take today A to C, you take this, or you could say by department or by employee type. You're going to work on everything and become more knowledgeable in the student transactions. You're going to work more on the staff or faculty transactions. So it's however you will set up within that, then we can also kind of look at it, and then when they get in their inbox, they say, oops, that's not faculty, I'm not going to touch it, or it's not the last name that I'm working on this week.
All right, so business processes. So it's our last core concept we're going to talk about, and then we'll actually get into the basic navigation, we'll get into the system and do a little bit of a demo. And we've talked about some of this already as we've gone through. So only users with appropriate security access can initiate processes. So if we think about a hire process, we're going to set up exactly who can hire people. Is it an HR partner, an HR analyst? Are there specific roles within organizations that can actually initiate that transaction? Then once initiated, Workday is going to route the task to the individual responsible roles based on how we set up your process. So for a hire, if it first needs to go to an HR director for approval, we can set that up. If it needs to go to payroll at some point, we will set that up. And as Angela mentioned, this is where we can set up specific condition rules based on the worker type, based on the organization, based on the type of hire, based on the location. So many different options when it comes to configuring that process to meet your needs. So again, we don't want to make them too complicated, but we also understand hiring a student worker looks very different than hiring a faculty member, right? So we want to make sure that those processes are configured to route to the specific people, to have all of those different rules to make sure that once that individual is hired, they have all of those pieces ready to go. So just as an example, so this is the request compensation change business process. So this would be if you needed or somebody needed to request a change to somebody's base salary ad hoc. So it's not going through a transfer or a promotion. It's just an ad hoc. We need to update this person's salary. So in this example, we're saying that an HR partner can initiate that process. They will propose the compensation. So they're going to go into Workday and they're going to say, John Smith is going to get a 10% increase, ad hoc for whatever reason. We can set up reasons in the system so it's all tracked. We know that it's whether it be merit-based or whatever it might be. From there, maybe it goes to the compensation partner. We can make this even a little more complicated. Maybe it only needs to go to the compensation partner if it's a 10%, greater than 10% of an adjustment. So that all can be built in the system as well. Then from there, it goes to the department head. Again, maybe it only needs to go to a department head in certain schools or colleges or units. And then from there, it'll go to the comp finance partner. So again, all of that's configurable based on your needs, and all of those different rules will be added in there based on the specific scenarios.
And so are those the roles are to the left here?
Yes.
Can you configure the naming of those roles?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, this is just a standard example, but you'll go through every business process when you do your architect workshops, all of it, and then we'll come back and show it to you in customer confirmation sessions to show you what you decided and what you built. Maybe when you come back and see it, you think, oh wait, that's gone too many places. We need to cut out one of these levels of approvals. So we'll build it for you based on what you think you want, and then we'll show it to you again as well.
But part of this question was nomenclature. It's important for us to understand what's MyDay nomenclature and Workday nomenclature that we can't change,
right?
And what things we can configure if we want to choose different words.
Yes. And all of that will be reviewed with you. There's a lot more now than it used to be. A few years ago, there really wasn't a whole lot within Workday that you could change, and now they're getting away from that. So most things you have an option to change.
All right, I'm going to pass it over to Lev. We're going to talk about just some basic Workday navigation.
So we're right around lunchtime at noon. I know we have delicious food sitting there in the back. So why don't we take a short break right now? Everyone grab some food, and then we'll come back and let's say in 10 minutes. 5 minutes.
Can I make a comment? Before we eat lunch, so I'll be brief. Some of this definition, much of this definition, would be enormously valuable to us. The idea of, for example, having roles and having end date with roles where managers have to reauthorize people for roles. I mean, tenured faculty is easy because they're continuous, but the idea that you're the director of a center for 3 years, or the director, I mean, we run into so much trouble where we have people who have roles that never end, even though 2 other people have been appointed to that role. I mean, that stuff is just, will be enormously helpful. Okay, thank you.
All right, we're going to continue on with more things to learn about Workday and do some demos for you, actually, to show you some hands-on activities and things in Workday. So it's going to get more exciting. So continue enjoying your lunch and drinks, and then if we need to pause later, take another break to get more refreshments or use the restroom, we'll do that too. We're here until 2 o'clock today. So I'm going to cover Workday basic navigation, really basic things of doing things in Workday as an employee or as a worker, kind of what you can see as you log in, what options you have available to you, and then later we're going to cover some of the processes, how you can hire someone or how you can change some aspects of the job or how you can terminate someone. All right? So we're going to start first with applications. So as you log into Workday, this would be the Workday landing page. This is what you would see. As you can see with these little worklets applications on the left side of me, those are called worklets. So worklets allow you to have access to specific information, and they also allow you to perform certain actions. All of that is configured based on security. So I might log into Workday as myself, and I might only have 2 or 3 of those worklets because of my security. My colleague who might sit right next to me, who has a different level of security, would have a lot more worklets that they have access to because of their security. Those worklets allow them, again, to see information and also perform tasks. And this would be the Workday homepage that basically shows a variety of things that I'm going to cover in a few minutes, and I'm actually going to demo that too. All right. Right there on the top, you'll see the search bar. That's another way how we can get to a task, or we can view information to you. So I can click on the worklet and get to time and absence information, or I can also do a search and search for whatever I'm looking within the time and absence, and also get to that same information through that. So sometimes you'll hear people talk about that in Workday you could come to information through different angles, through different ways. So it could be through a worklet, but you can also go get to it through a search bar. Employees become comfortable one or the other way, and sometimes they'll be like, oh, it took me 2 minutes, it took me 30 seconds. So later on we start talking about what are some best practices and tips and tricks to get to something faster than maybe the other way. So there's different ways of how we can get to that. Okay. Within the search bar, we can do word completion. Once I start typing something like, let's say, create, Workday is going to start showing me what I could do with create. It could be create an exit interview. It could be create inbox filter. It's kind of like Google. When I'm trying to type, it's already like pre-populating some things and telling me, are you looking for this information or that? So in a way, it kind of saves a little bit of information, starts kind of populating things that I have access and security to, and telling me, do you want to click on this or not? Predictive search, that's kind of like predicting maybe what you're looking for that. Looking for keywords like create or edit based on the tasks or reports that we're trying to run. As you can see there, it's showing you create exit interview. It's a task. When it's a report, it will show that it's a report.
Is that limit based on your security?
Yes.
Or is it everything?
Mm-hmm. Yes, based on your security. So if I wanted to create a position and I don't have a security role that's allowing me to create a position, I could sit there and type create position 500 times. It still would not allow me to get to that because I don't have that security. So sometimes those calls will come up then to the Workday team saying, I really want to create a position because the manager asking me to hire someone ASAP, why can't I do that? It's not that Workday is broken, it's you don't have access to this. And that's definitely going to be something that we'll need to work to educate the community. I've certainly seen where employees think that the system is broken when it really they don't have the access to it.
And this is something we were talking earlier about terminology and how you speak here. One of the things that also comes up is something called search synonyms. So let's say in Workday they call time off, they call it absence. Maybe your terminology is just everybody just uses PTO. We can create synonyms so that if somebody were to type in PTO, it would pull up the time off business process or whatever it does, just so we can speak the same language. So thanks.
Yeah. The other thing that's really helpful and useful here with the search bar too, that somebody might have had a lot of experience and exposure to Workday, but really intuitive to what they're looking for and searching for those verbs like creating something or editing or looking for a type of report. They can be thinking of a report and by leave of absence, for example, they're pulling that data wanting to see a cost center or something. If they type that, Workday gives them that predictive search of some of the information they can choose from and look at that. So I didn't really need to rely a lot on calling people and asking, give me exactly word by word where I can find that form, where what I had to do in the past when I was in HR. I was able to type and kind of work with Workday to get the information that I needed. So related actions is another way how we can get to a task and perform some of the activities. As you can see right underneath the employee's name, Sam, that's the related action. If I click on that, it would allow me, gives me a menu of options of what I can do. Employees have that and they're able to see some of the information. Based on the security role, you also have more ability to perform actions or maybe only view information. So the more things under the actions that you can do based on more security roles that you have and you've been given access to perform those tasks and do that on the employee. The other way actions are displayed in Workday is through that Twinkie bar I've heard it being called. It's also a brick. Yeah. It's however you call it. It's that little orange icon that is also referred to actions. So a lot of these things will be in Workday. If they're highlighted in yellow, and that related action will be connected right next to the little brick or little Twinkie, that you can click on that and it will allow you to see the menu of options that you can do to perform on that worker, whether it's change something or view something on their record. Right. So if I was working in Workday and I wanted to get back to the home screen and I wasn't in the right place and I'm confused, I can always just click on that Workday icon and it'll take me back to my home page. Not a lot of options to get lost there pretty quickly to get back to your home page. If I click on, as you can see, Logan McNeil is the employee that we're going to actually demo and look in Workday. If I click on her profile, on her picture, it gives me a menu of options of what I could see as Logan myself, or if I am looking at Logan as a manager, she's my employee. So over here is also allowing you to see the options. Here I'm looking at Logan. She can look at her profile. She can see what favorite items she favorited, maybe some of the processes that she often, or certain reports that she runs often. She can look at her reports. She can look at her sitemap, her account, and change some settings there. So clicking on the profile gives her option of the menu of items that she can see. And we're going to click a little bit around that and do a little bit of a scavenger hunt and look around in information to get you more familiar with that. So worker profile is also like here where I could see Logan displaying all the details about her job, her contact information, when she started the position, what role she holds, when she was hired into this, her original hire date, when she might have moved around. I could see feedback that was provided to her by different managers or employees, depending how you set up who can give feedback and who can request feedback. But on the employee profile, all that information is being displayed. It's not like it's hidden anywhere that employees are not able to see that. It's pretty easy and quick way to see that.
Is that a mix between self-service and institution service?
The self-service is what employee can log in and be able to see that on there.
Put that information on the profile is a mix of the two kinds of things?
Two kinds of things, yes. Certain things employee might not be able to see, but their managers might have access to their information.
And you can build the profile with whatever kind of data sets you've built in there, so we can multiple locations if we want, things like that, based on what we set up elsewhere.
Yep.
So right on the top, you can see there are two icons. One looks like a little bell shape, and the other one is an envelope. So the first one is the bell. That's the notifications. That's more notifying and telling you more kind of like alerts, things that would be helpful to know, maybe displaying birthdays or processes that's helpful for you to know things that are coming up. And the other one that's more of an envelope, that's your inbox. That's the tasks that need to be completed and require your action. These are not your FYIs and more alerts. These are really things that you need to complete and they need to be reviewed. But if that task comes to 3 employees with the same role, the first one who takes action on it, it will remove that task from the other 2. So if the 3 of us right now holding the role of HR analyst and all 3 of us receive that task to approve the hire, if I'm the first one to click approve, then both of my colleagues over here will not see it in their inbox.
So the alerts are not about transactions?
Alerts more
just information, systems and data.
Like I just had a new hire that got hired into our Workday tenant. I got a notification that the hire was complete and this is his start date. Yeah.
So helpful information for you to know. Maybe some updates are happening or reports are being shared or something like that. Okay. So in Workday Inbox is your items require your action, like we mentioned. Within Workday, we have 2 tabs there, your Inbox, and we also have Archive. Archive holds a record of all what has been taken action on. It's basically kind of like your history. This is what you perform, and it's showing you things up to 30 days. So if I wanted to go back and take a look what last week I performed or I completed, I can go into the archive and be able to see that. I can also set up my inbox and archive with the search tips. If I only wanted to see transactions that were related to compensation change, I'll be able to see that. So it's an easier way to filter in the way you have like with your email inbox.
So if I'm doing an employee's attendance, all I have is 30 days, or I can get reports that go back further, but I have to do it as a report function, it's not as a...
So reports, you can do them, run it separately. This is more just like what you've completed, more of an actions. Like it came to your inbox to approve something,
Right.
you
So it comes to me to approve somebody's vacation this week. I can only go back 30 days to find out what their attendance has been?
In the archive, you can see that there, what you approved within the last 30 days. But if you want to drill back to the employee, you can always see that data as far as you wanted to when you approved it, let's say a year ago, 2 years ago, or balances and things like that. This is just more to see what you approved within the last 30 days, kind of tracks that. So here's an image of actions. This is what needs to be done, what's still sitting in the inbox, and the archive will show you what has been already completed there. And as I mentioned, we can set up filters there, what we can do. We can see things that are favorites or things that are already overdue. If you set up some timelines and saying that this approval really needs to happen within 48 hours, and then Workday will show you that it's been more than 48 hours here. In the sort by, I can also say, show me newest, top, or oldest, or show me things that are more of an interest to me, only maybe compensation items and things like that. So you can kind of set up your inbox based on your own usability and the volume that you have.
So the example we talked about earlier where maybe a transaction is going to go to everybody in shared services, but maybe internally they're going to determine, I'm going to take this school or college, I'm going to take this one. You can actually set up those filters where I can go in my inbox, I can just click the filter for that specific school or college, and then I only see transactions related to them.
It's a great example. So some employees, if they have 400, 500 transactions coming to their inbox, and today they're really going to be focusing on, especially like roles like in central HR, if they have to approve something, say today you're going to focus only on student employees prior to payroll deadline or financial aid. They can set up their filters that only show me this information so they can quickly get through that data and process it and get it moving it out.
On the certain filter items, sticky settings, or would you have to reset it every time you go back to it?
You could do favorite some of them. That would be like remembering some of them. Like I always used to have more like faculty items, especially like one-time payments and things like that, because I knew those were timely and very important to process and approve them. They would right away show up on the top as my favorite.
Okay.
The other option that, so over here you can see in Workday you can filter things by favorites. You can also favorite your items and know that you can come back and complete them, because that's going to be like your reminder and that you would click on that little star. You can print something should you really needed a reason for that, but at the same time, moving to Workday, not wanting to track lots of paper, keeps it all there in the archive, but if somebody needed to print it and add it to their paper file or submit it to another department, there's an option to do that. There's additional options, and that little circle looks like a little widget there. If they click on that, then they'll be able to see if they can cancel or deny the process or look at additional options that are available. And then the two arrows pointing into different directions, expanding the message if they wanted to see it in the bigger window and be able to see all the details. Delegation. So this is really helpful if somebody is going to be out of the office or somebody is going to be serving on a committee and not going to be available to complete the processes of the tasks in Workday. So I've used this a lot and given my delegation, my task to somebody else on the team when I was serving on a committee, wouldn't be in the office, I'm going on a prolonged vacation or something like that. So Workday easily allows you to do that I could easily say that tomorrow I'm out of the office, I'm going to give these particular tasks to approve X, Y, and Z to my colleague Tanya, who will serve on my behalf and will review and approve those tasks. I can be detailed and specific to what exactly I want to delegate to her, which doesn't mean that Tanya now is inheriting all the access that I have. She's only going to inherit the tasks to approve X process.
This is one I would say is good for conversation sooner rather than later, because it's not a decision that's easy to come to. Who are you going to let delegate? Are they only allowed to delegate for PTO, or at a certain level and above, are they allowed to delegate everything? So having that conversation, at least getting it started, is a good one to start.
I think duration's another part to that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think this was, by Workday design, I don't think this was intended to permanently delegate your task over to someone.
Correct.
No, but I've seen it done at the university level for, certain people.
Exactly. No, so I think clarifying what we mean by delegation.
Yeah.
It's more for like short term, somebody like being on a short vacation to make sure there's no bottleneck with approvals, that things are not just sitting in somebody's inbox and things are not moving forward. So a lot of times it's those who approve expenses, maybe something paying out with payroll timeline looking at, one-time payments, compensation changes, or absence of leave of absence or something like that, to make sure that those are not sitting and impacting the employee with their pay or anything like that. So definitely would need to be the decision being made, what are those items exactly and who would be eligible for that delegation. And you can do a delegation on items that are already in your inbox, things that came in and you're like, oh, this came in, but it's going to take a lot more time for me to investigate, to say if I'm going to approve it or reject it, but I'm going to assign it to my employee who is on my team who has the time for that. Or I can also do a delegation proactively for knowing that next week I'm going to be out of the office and I don't want these certain processes to be stuck in the middle and not be approved.
So the question I was going to ask was, if I want to delegate something to someone else, but that person currently doesn't have, kind of going back to the security questions, they currently don't have, let's say I can approve anybody in any department, whatever, thing I need to approve, and I need to assign something, a cost center to somebody that doesn't normally have that. Is that all just part of this, or is there any approvals that do you need to have a certain level to be able to do that?
So all of that will be established during your design sessions when you talk through it about can you delegate to a peer, does it have to be a superior, can it be somebody below you, all of that gets set up. But when you switch accounts, you physically switch to that person's account and you have access to whatever processes. You can mark they get access to my entire inbox, or you can mark they only get access to approving time. So when I log in, one of my managers was out last week. When I went to approve timesheets, I had my own timesheets in my inbox. Then I switched to her account and I had her team members, and I was able to go through and approve time. But that was all that I saw because it was all we configured it to do. So all of that are decisions that are made during the architect workshops.
But the design question is, Amy has the ability to say, I don't let other people normally approve the chancellor's travel expenses. But I'm out, and I want to have Tim do that while I'm out. But he doesn't have regular access to this information. It can be configured that way?
Yes, because he would basically be switching his view of Workday to her view. But we only have access to whatever you wanted him to see. But yes, it can be configured that way.
So that's a very, very important feature. We'll have to understand that, because one of the things I've been concerned about here is that executive level managers are going to have very wide access, but they're not going to want to actually do anything. Well, Amy's an exception. I actually
That's what every university thinks of us.
I actually, nobody wants me to do anything.
But you're right, there's a lot of things we don't do that people do for us.
Right. And then we say, do this.
Right, and that's common. I mean, I'm thinking of an example. We were just out at UNLV, and I was in a training session with their head football coach, and he was like, I'm never going to log into Workday, so how do I set this up to delegate to my assistant? And they made the decision as a university, they were going to let certain people delegate full-time.
Let's be clear.
Yeah.
None of us at the university, including the chancellor, are nearly as important as or as well paid as a Division I football coach or basketball coach. We are, Mike Krzyzewski makes 9 times as much as the chancellor of Washington University. Let's be clear. Priorities of America.
So in that example, Angela, when you said that it goes, they permanently made that decision.
They did. For a certain level, but yeah.
Is that through a permission? Is that something different than delegation?
No, it would be delegation, because it still has to show in Workday on the audit who's doing what. So it would say that you had done it on behalf of Hank, right? So it would still be through delegation. They just made a decision from a policy standpoint that they had a group of people they were going to let do that, and then they set up a security role for that group of people with some of their executives, some of their coaches. So it can be done.
But
it's not encouraged in Workday.
It is a security role.
It is, yes, it's set it up by that.
Yeah, because I just wanted to sort of place in the room, this is conversation that we heard last week. So correct me if I don't have this right. The system sort of assumes managers, people who get identified in management, should be kicking off transactions and or approving transactions. And if we, in this supervisory org structure, want to name real management, which might include Dr. Schmo, who's principal investigator of this lab, but we know Dr. Schmo's never going to initiate a hire in the system. He has someone else who wants to do that. That there might be security roles that are very similar to the manager. Maybe they don't do absolutely everything like performance management, but they initiate transactions for that manager.
All of that is set up on the business process when you configure.
And that sounds still a little different than what you're saying about short-term delegation.
That is different. Correct. That is just saying establishing who can initiate that process for different supervisory organizations.
But it may create more roles, which is
And it's very typical in higher ed to see that, because it's known that faculty or researchers are not going to be approving timesheets for every single student or doing performance or initiating jobs. terminating employees and things like that. So there's definitely a way of like how that's been done. And you can also determine and say for certain things it has to be a manager. And maybe we do need to do some cultural shift here where certain things faculty do have to do. If it's something, a bigger bonus that's given. I've seen that where it was any bonuses above $15,000 have to be initiated by a manager no matter who. And some things it's like, no, it could be initiated by HR administrator who serves in the unit, and maybe it's an executive assistant to a faculty. So it's based on what your needs are and how the university functions, we can configure Workday that way and work with you on that.
And business processes vary among the units. So one unit could do it one way, another unit the other way, or is it standard across?
It can vary. I mean, this is when your functional team is going to push back.
It can't vary.
Well, it can vary,
okay.
But your functional team is going to push back on how much of that variance do you have, because that's just more maintenance moving on. So we're going to talk to, is there a real business reason this has to happen? If it is, it can absolutely vary.
Okay.
If there's not a real reason, it's just because we've done it this way in the past, we're going to push you to think differently and try to align more to a standard process.
For compliance perspective, you want to bring things as much as possible to continue in the same way, so that way you can be managing and setting the same expectations. If there's slightly little things that they do, especially on the side, how they interview people, but then how they get to Workday, that might need to go through the same process so you have accountability and compliance pieces, and you can be monitoring things and running reports. Because if you want to run reports for the entire organization, the more variation you have, the harder it's going to be for you to look at that data and have those analytics.
Faculty hiring is a good example that we need to talk about, because we have processes all over the map, both in HRMS and outside HRMS with different products. And so there's a conversation to be had about it.
Yeah, that's definitely, I've seen that in other higher ed institutions where faculty, even the file, the cases that come to the provost office and what goes in the search committees versus hiring a staff member. And maybe some things will not go through Workday for faculty exactly the same way as it would go for a staff. Maybe recruiting will happen outside of Workday, but then the hire will happen the same way for staff and for faculty in the benefit election and all that. So certainly in those sessions that we'll have, we'll go through that questions and list them your requirements and things and figure out what makes sense and where we need to make some changes or where we continue the way it is right now. All right. So then the other part highlighted here is the announcements. As you can see over there on the right corner, announcements are things like you want to highlight for the whole organization. You want to state maybe benefits election is coming. Pay attention to that. Or Workday tenant refresh is happening, some technical updates that might be happening, or a system outage is going to happen. You won't be able to have access to that. Or payroll is coming at the end of this week. Print out your pay stubs. W-2s are available electronically right now. This is just basically a great way to get employees used to getting information from HR or any other information you'd like them to have here, that they start coming to this corner looking for information in Workday. And for institutions that are used to having multiple ways of where information lives, and employees don't always know, like, what's the true source of information? Who do I go to? Who do I call? If I need to know how to get my W-2 or things related to HR or finance, then this becomes an easy way for them to find that information and for you to maintain and to update. All right. So I'm going to log into a tenant that we have and do a few demos. So give me a couple minutes to get that started and we'll go with that. I'm going to sit down and set some of the things here.
While she's configuring, I got to leave it at 1:15. I don't know whether you'll get to it in the last hour, but I'm curious as to what kind of native reporting exists within Workday. I don't know if you're going to get that here.
They do have some of that at the end of this. I believe it's sort of toward the end of the agenda.
I know she's got configured, so that's fine. But, yeah,
okay.
Just trying to understand what you guys have versus what we need in the warehouse is one of the sort of critical path pieces that we have these two engagements going simultaneously.
Right.
And there's an overlap, and if we don't figure out that overlap, we'll end up without any lack.
Right, and you'll have a reporting lead who can give you advice on that. We certainly, I mean, Workday delivers.
I don't want to wait till we're doing architecture. I want to understand within the next couple of weeks what's native in Workday and what does a warehouse have to give us if we want to do more complicated reporting.
Okay, Dan, should we schedule a follow-up to sort of start
similar to this? I mean, this is really good. It understands the nuts and bolts of this. I need, for me, to understand the nuts and bolts of the reporting infrastructure native to Workday to deal with our business reporting on a semi-annual, quarterly, monthly, yearly basis versus what we have to go push into a warehouse process.
Okay.
Thanks.
There is some activity planned here already, so I just. Good. I don't want to dismiss, I just.
Okay, good. Great. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, well, I'm logged in as Logan McNeil right now, and we're just using a general tenant right now, so this is all fake data, so nothing this is like real information or data that you're looking at, so take it with a grain of salt. This is not collaborative information that we're displaying here for you. So I am Logan McNeil here, and as I logged in over here, as I mentioned, I have a couple announcements that are available to me. I can click on the announcements and view more details about it. Certainly can be configured to more images or more details, however you want to set that up. But that's like where it would be displaying over here. Here's my list of worklets that I have available to me that I can click on and perform actions of view information. So I'm going to go on personal information, kind of like the more basic and simple one. Over here you can see two columns that I have, change and view. So some things I can change and some things I can only view. This is also configured based on the security that I have and what's allowed for me to change and what's not. So I could change emergency contacts, but maybe for email addresses, I can only view some of that. So it depends on how you will set it up. This is just something that, like, as an example, was thrown to show it here. So if I click, let's say, an emergency contact, it's pretty easy and simple, intuitive that I can click on edit and make my changes and click submit. And in this case, it might not go anywhere for approval, but you can also determine and say when somebody's changing their emergency contact, you want them to, this route to benefits to get approved for whatever reason that you might have. If somebody's changing their gender, you might say we want that approved to be or reviewed by someone. Well, you want a reminder to be given to them that you're updating X, Y, and Z. It might lead to you needing to update your benefits. So all of that would be based on how you would like to be configured. I'm going to cancel it out, won't change anything. I'm happy with what I have. And like I said, if I want to go back to the home page, I'm just going to click on Workday over here. It brings me back to where I am. So over here, I have a whole bunch of worklets, things that I work on a regular basis with the roles that I have. Looks like I do some recruiting, right? So easy way I could click on recruiting, and I can see what candidates I can find, job requisitions that I can create through here. I could see how I can invite people to apply for jobs that I have within my organization. I can view job requisitions and my recruiting jobs. So again, splits into what I have available. And then right in the bottom in the recent, it's showing me what recent positions, requisitions I have opened. So if I wanted a quick way to say I just posted something recently, Regional Finance Manager, I can click on that and drill down on more information about what is happening with this requisition, how many people have applied, in what process, and what stage they are. So worklets, like we said, they give us a quick and easy access to view information and to process. Right?
Love, can you click back into that recruiting a little more time? At the top.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just wanted to point out, if you go down to, like, click into one of the requisitions, see if she hovers right there. Oh wait, go back. When she hovers, you don't see that Twinkie doesn't come up yellow. Can you go back on screen?
There we go. To make it small. So right over here is the Twinkie where I could yes.
Right. So it's not visible on the screen all of the time, but on almost every thing in Workday, every line, every report, every piece of functionality, you're going to be able to click over there on the right, and if she clicks on that, it's going to tell her what she can do with this job requisition. So this is throughout Workday, but it's not always visible because it doesn't come up until you're highlighted over it. And so I just wanted to point that out.
Like we mentioned, we have actions that we could do it through this Twinkie or a brick, and this is what Angela's referring to.
So go back to and open up the dashboard screen there. So this is some native reporting. So these are instantly created reporting right here. So just giving you pictures of candidates by source and where they are in the process. And that's all drillable right there.
Can I ask what might sound like a Dukas question? The coding of like moving from one stage to the next, is there something inherent that the system can know that about a person, or is that being driven by the manager, for example, denoting what stage an applicant is in some way?
So I don't want to get too far in the weeds. Recruiting is different than every other module in Workday in that it has a dynamic business process. So for every other thing else, so let's talk about hire. A has to happen before B happens. Maybe there's 3 things that happen at C, but they all 3 have to happen before you go to D.
Yep.
Recruiting is a one module that's not that way.
Right.
So it will be denoted based on where the person chooses to move them to, based on what you allow. But essentially in recruiting, you could go to a phone screen, or then you could go back, or you could jump straight to an offer. Whatever you determine that people are allowed to do, it is dynamic in that way. And so once it's tracked on that candidate, you'll see the business process as it went through. But it's basically the manager selecting where do you want to go, and does it need to go back to a second interview? Can this person go straight to offer? All of that is dynamic.
You'll be able to like determine what stages make sense here, which ones are optional, which ones are required. Like you would say everyone needs to have a reference check and background check, but maybe for certain positions background check is not required because they're temporary positions, so you could skip that.
You can also go through stages multiple times. So like the interview stage, oftentimes there's a phone interview, a first interview, a panel interview, third, whatever it might be. And you can have that set up as well where they can re-enter and go through that stage multiple times.
All right. So right over here where I can configure my work list, I can add more or I can change. I'm already at 20. 20 is really my max, but if I wanted to remove, if required worklets, that you will determine what would be the required worklets that all employees would have access to. Those, as you can see, I have no option to make any changes over here, but on my optional worklets, I'm able to remove something and then easily add something else here and say I want to see what other options are available and make that worklet come up and be at the top of my page, so I'm able to see that because maybe I'm working a lot with active plans or 5-year headcount trend. Whatever that might be that would be here, you'll be able to select that and then confirm it.
How did you get to that?
So right over here, when I went to my front page, right over here is this circles. I clicked it on that, and then it took me there.
You click in recruiting again. So it shows more 3 in parentheses 3, implying that there's other things there.
So
do they bubble up based on how much you use that? Is there a setting for that? Like which ones are shown and which ones aren't?
I think the order is set to my understanding. As far as you're talking about the order that they're appearing in the list?
Right, and how some are not appearing, but some are.
Yeah, I think your recruiting lead sets would determine that, and that's how it would be for everybody. But some people may not have access to as many reports. I mean, basically everything on the right is a report, so it's also based on security. I don't know if you can configure the order, but we could certainly ask our functional team that.
So, I have a question about, I could see that there are 199 items in the inbox. So
yeah, I was going to get to that soon.
Logan has a lot to do. So
busy, we're keeping her busy.
I'm interested to see how that gets divided or prioritized or offered by the system.
All right, so let me quickly cover the search, and then we'll jump into notifications and inbox, and we'll take a look at that. So as I mentioned earlier, the search is where you can type. I could maybe see if I wanted to create a position, I could start with the word create, and as you can see, it's giving me options of things of what I'm able to do. If I wanted just to go with create and see the whole list, and it'll give me the catalog of options of what's available under that. In the categories, I can drill down and say, show me with create everything within all of Workday. I want to see everything that Workday has with create.
This person was an HR person, wasn't that correct?
Logan is a bit special. She has a lot of roles and a lot of security. She's very important in the organization, does a lot of work.
So she's an HR administrator. She's also an HR partner on a lot of organizations. So this is why she has 199 inbox items. So it's not
a lot of choices.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. She's also a payroll administrator, payroll partner. She's a lot of different things.
She's a busy woman.
She is.
So we keep her busy.
Yes.
So she's the queen of Workday, that way we call her. Yeah. So you could kind of like then drill down based on your search results. The easiest, the best way is really to go all the Workday, so that way you're not missing anything and you're looking at that. But if you're looking for a specific employee, let's say I'm going to say I want to find Jack, and I only want to see people with the name Jack, and then I could click on people, and then it's going to show me how many employees I could see with the name Jack.
Today we would normally search on that using their info ID.
You could do that.
You could do that.
Yep. Do you know their info ID? Yeah.
Jack, you can have, right.
Yeah, but here it kind of gives you more, and if they have pictures, images, and their names, and then their employee ID may be connected right next in the brackets. It'll be easier for them to identify and find out what that.
The cost center, that's employee ID.
Are you seeing applicants there also that are named?
You're seeing their pre-hire record as well as their employee record.
So they've been hired, they just haven't come yet, they're not just applicants, or?
No, everybody has a pre-hire record.
Okay.
So if you look up me in our collaborative Workday, I have an employee record and I have a pre-hire record.
All right, so I'm going to click on the notifications. Those are my FYIs, things that are helpful for me to know. And like, again, state tax selections, activity stream subject, things that might have been completed, and it's just I'm being notified that this has been finalized. And if I wanted to take a look at that, I can certainly sit and review more of an FYI. No action is necessarily needed from me. And then once I go into my inbox, these are the actions that I need to complete. And certainly Logan is very busy. She has a lot of things that she needs to do. So over here, I could start going from top to bottom, right? And sit all day and all night and complete them. Or I can delegate maybe some of them and go over here, click on this arrow and say my delegations, show me who's already been delegated, and maybe I need to manage and add more people and delegate specific items. Like in this case, Jenna is doing right now for me expense reports. This is the begin date when I have for Jenna doing it. I don't have an end date because I want Jenna just to take care of all these expense reports because that's just too much work for me to do that. So again,
Do I have, if I'm the manager doing some delegation, do I have insight into Jenna's inbox? Do I know what her desk audit looks like before I delegate to her? Is it the straw that breaks the camel's back? Or
you can't proxy as Jenna to be able to log in to see that. So that's one thing you would have to rely and ask Jenna and say, Jenna, what's your workload? How many do you have right now? But you're not able to do, proxy as Jenna and then log in as her and see what she has.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Delegation is a business process, though, which means we can set up approvals on it. So if you initiate it, it could go to Jenna's manager, and Jenna's manager could determine, no, she can't be a delegate, or maybe it goes to Jenna herself.
I'm just thinking of the scenario, and I don't want to push it too hard, where I'm going through and I've got this long list of things, and I'm pushing them off to Jenna and others, but Jenna's got a long list, and you could get to this situation where you're adding significantly to the workload of A, B, or C without really knowing that. And sure, there should be conversations amongst managers as a part of the process, but technology makes it quite easy to say, now Mark, you're responsible for this thing. And what I didn't know is he was about to come in and tell me, I got way too much on my plate, I can't take another thing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it doesn't do that. You won't have the flexibility to look at that at this time.
It's definitely a conversation that would need to be happening on the side before. Sure. Yeah, or it might get delegated and then taken back because the person has too much.
And to that point, would the person know, so if in Dedrick's example, if he had delegated a Mark, would he somehow know if Mark had actually done that? Would it come back in any way to say, oh, you delegated that 10 days ago and Mark didn't get it done?
Yes, it's still visible in the inbox of the person who delegated it.
Okay.
You can also run reports to see on those items and see, has it been completed, how many still outstanding. Certain reports can be run on certain processes to say like how many, where onboarding is. There's also dashboards could be set up to see where onboarding is at what stage, or depending on what it is that you have.
Is reporting delivered on business processes, or can you say you want reporting on this process, we don't want reporting on this process, or is it just delivered based on the process?
I don't know specifically on which ones are delivered right away and which ones you have to request that.
You can request reporting on business processes.
Yes, there are some that you can. I don't know that I have a full list of, because that's our functional team that would configure that, but yeah, you can. And there's different charts you can set up and different views that can be done within different processes and other things.
Like I said, recruiting is somewhat different than the hire, so you definitely want to take a look at like what that VP is and what exactly you would like to track and what reports or what dashboards you would like to set up. Like I know that onboarding is a popular one. A lot of people have a dashboard for that, so they can track and see how many people have been already through I-9 process, since you need to track that, the 3-day compliance, and how many folks are still in the step prior to that and where they are, how many days it's been and things like that.
Is that separate functionality from the business process?
It would be driven from the business processes because you'll be able to see that, but it's a dashboard that you can set up that you can click on it and it's going to show you all the information on that. All employees in your supervisory work that are going through onboarding.
I just have one more question for you. So I'm trying to get a sense of to what degree can the system as it is now be used for desk audits, right? So understanding what is, what somebody's load is, and we point out, are there reports or dashboards that are native to Workday that help you perform a desk audit for someone who's supposed to be clearing I-9s or whatever?
There are definitely reports that can be set up. There's some reports, like we said, Workday delivered reports, and there's some reports that could be customized, that created for that. And that would be a conversation later on with the reporting lead for what it is exactly you would like to have a manager report. They can kind of manage the workload and see where things are. And then certain reports that might be already at the fingertips where you can run up through customized reports through Workday you could see.
Yeah, and there's many circumstances where you take the Workday delivered report and then you just make one tweak to it. There's something you want to add that Workday didn't come delivered, but that's an easy way without having to truly build a custom report. You're just taking the information that's there and manipulating how you want to see it. And that's something that we'll do throughout the course of the project as we start implementing and really looking at those reports, and you see the output as we get data in the system.
Dedrick's right that for things that involve processing, you have to be a little careful because not everything's created the same. It gives you incredible data on how fast, how much people are doing.
That's what I was actually going to ask. I'm thinking about right now we have like some metrics on how fast we can process. A different, how much time does it take us to, process a check payment or something like that on the finance side, but there's things like that on the HR side. So would you be able to create reports within here so that I can see that, Hank's really fast and he got, 25 I-9s done in the time that I only got 3 I-9s done?
Yeah, you could definitely set your KPIs and then create reports that would work with that. I know for sure because I worked with that, where I had a team in the shared services and then wanting to measure and do that. So but you would have to be very clear on setting up your business processes timelines on that, saying that for this it needs to be 2 days, and then you'll be able to see who completed it within 2 days versus 1 day. You might not get by the seconds and things like that, to know, but you'll be able to run a report and say, out of 15 analysts, how many completed. Maybe 50 Hank completed and only 20 were done by Alan, and you'll be able to triage it that way. Sorry to pick on him.
Alan's much better than me.
One thing, maybe just to comment, the concept of this inbox being filled with transactions that someone goes out and approves involves a certain number of managers, but more of it is really in the hands of people that are like payroll or HR department admins, and they're the ones usually going out and actually working, initiating transactions, working the transactions. If a manager's actually in the workflow with a role that requires them to approve something before it moves on, then they would have to deal with their inbox. Most managers do not deal with their inbox, never go in the system to even look into it. So just as a kind of current state.
So I got a question kind of along those same lines. So this is your inbox. Earlier you said there might be multiple employees that kind of share that same inbox, like a shared service center or something like that. And that if I was one of those individuals and I did a transaction and it would disappear in the other person's list, is there almost adding it to my queue, saying I'm working this transaction so somebody else doesn't see that?
No, unfortunately, when you can't do that, there isn't a way like that you could star it and say like it's only going to be for me and stuff. You're not able to as of right now, Workday doesn't have that. Last year there was a brainstorm for that was suggested, and I know institutions were voting on that because that was something that another client was very interested in doing, that it would disappear. But until it's done, then it won't disappear there. So if you wanted to say, I want to do, or you would have to delegate it to them and assign it directly, but that's like a volume if you have to be sitting through and doing that. So another thing is that it's not everything like a shared inbox that we have, like an Outlook, right? You could give everyone the same password, you can log in and stuff. It's more based on the role. So if you and I have an HR analyst role together for that specific supervisory work and those things come to us for approval, then we'll both get it. But if somebody else, Angela, doesn't have that role, but she's doing something similar in shared services, her inbox might look 200 items too, but it might be different 200 items.
Yeah, to me, if the transaction's really quick, that's probably not that big of a deal. But if I have to do any kind of research, two people could be working on the same transaction at the same time and not necessarily know it.
Yeah.
My question goes to, I think you alluded to this when you were talking about I-9s, potentially a couple of days that the system is set up where we can expect a turnaround. So I guess that's a question related to the deadline. If I'm entering something and I know it's basic request, I need somebody to work on something, are those timelines preset so that the type of thing I'm asking for is a 3-day turnaround, whatever that is? How is that in the system? How then, if I'm in a situation where I need a rush, is that accomplished? And then how is there a back-end audit to make sure not everything I do is in as a rush? So I'm getting the system.
So it becomes everything is an emergency, right? As you can see over here in the inbox, some things are saying when items are due. So it's been configured that, let's say, job requisition, for whatever that she needs to do with that, create a job requisition, maybe review and submit it. It was due 6/13. For other items, maybe it's less than 3 or 4 days. It's 6/11.
It's set up when you configure the business process. You can put timelines that would give you those dates, and then you'll get alerts if it's not been done. I mean, one of the most common reports we see run right after go live is like business processes of X type awaiting action for X number of days. So you can also go in and say, you know, we've got onboarding coming and we need to see how many people are still outstanding, who's it sitting with. So those are very common until people get used to going into their inbox, so you can help push people along. But you can't, to my knowledge, you can't change, if we've determined during configuration that this business process has 3 days to complete, you can't go in and change it for one specific thing. Yeah. You would just have to, email and tell somebody, I need this to be, a rush.
And then that 3-day turnaround is somehow visible when the person's typing it in?
Yeah, it shows up.
Shows up, yeah. And it's definitely in training too. We'll be communicating what things are, how many days, and what's expected. And then on the approval process, central roles, also expectation being set. What are we driving towards to, and how management may be running some reports and looking at that, at the volume, or repeat offenders who are submitting last minute one-time payments before payroll deadline, or who's not approving time for student workers and then payroll is not picking it up, or they're doing on-demand checks and things like that. So there's definitely in those sessions that we'll have with you, we'll discuss where right now you're having some hiccups, where things coming in late, whether it's I-9s or time approval, whatever that might be, and how we can help make things move forward so that's not reactive but more proactive.
Is the sort by something that due date comes up on?
So over here, I could click here and say, show me everything that's overdue. So today I'm like, yeah, I really want to take care of things that have already been overdue, right? And there's like a lot, I've been kind of slacking on my overdue items. Or I could say, I really want to work on everything that has to do with compensation, because I don't want anyone to get in trouble with when payroll is coming up and not be taken care of. As you can see, Logan is really good when it comes to money. She takes care of all the compensation. It's on her mind, payroll is important.
But I think what you're asking, those can be configured. The filters you can customize.
I was just going to, yeah. So there's edit filters. Put it the drop into it. This is my newest. Here you could do that oldest, the due soonest on top, so you can do that. And then over here, I could also set it up by do edit filters, and I could put one of the new options here that would be important. So that just so you know over there. All right, so we looked at the inbox. So let's click on Logan and take a look at what Logan has available to her to see here. Here's the actions tab again, where we said if we click on that, or it's that orange Twinkie that gives us what we're able to perform and do. So we can look at payroll, compensation, we can either do view or we can perform a task, business processes, we can do manage delegation, reassign tasks, view security, view skip tasks and things like that. And anything that's over here on her profile that is highlighted in blue and hyperlink, that's something that I can click and drill deeper and see more information there. So for example, I could do an organization. Logan sits in the Global Modern Services Human Resources. If I click on that, it gives me more information about the supervisory organization. In the Actions tab, if I click, again, I'm able to perform some actions. I can maybe hire people into the supervisory org. I can change some employees or terminate. So this Action tab gives me more ability to perform the tasks. Right?
Could you go to the job profile somewhere?
You can go back.
One of the things, I guess, that we also thought we heard is that today's job codes, for example, will all change. So essentially, there will be an integrated set of job codes. The system actually assigns that number that connects behind the scenes to the title. And it's really the job family that becomes very important for reporting. And so there is work that we have to do to make sure that our current list of job families is robust enough today to handle really reporting needs. And chances are we will need to have 2 layers to really capture everything, the group and the family.
And then the salary ranges within that, internal, external, and looking at the market data if you're going to drill for that and look and provide those reports.
Right.
So yeah, the job family.
So the layout that you have of the job details, much of that comes from a pre-set up job profile for each of the jobs. And there wasn't, I don't think, salary range information. Is that typically not show to managers?
It's
or can it be added or?
Yeah, I mean, that really just depends.
Configurable.
All of that is configurable.
So we can add it.
Based on what you want to see.
Okay.
Yeah, so like here I clicked on the job profile, right, and it's the Vice President Human Resources. You could see when it became effective. Is it inactive? It's no, and then provides the job code, all the details of brief responsibilities, information about it. It's at the level 5, at the management level, and then it gives me more details about classification, work shift required, not for this public job or not. And there's certainly more information on compensation, and you could add more things and add the base salary, internal, external market data, and if it's within the range or outside of the range. You can even set it up if somebody's using that job profile and they're saying, you know, we're planning to pay when they're creating a position $100,000, but really for that position the range is 150 to 180. It's going to maybe give them a red flag and say you need to provide a justification why it's lower, why it's higher. So it's kind of like how you would like to manage it. We can set it up that way and work with you how you want to manage when somebody's paying way above the market data or below the market data.
And I think you hit the nail on the head that you're going to spend a lot of time within your job architecture developing your families and down into your job profiles. If you think back to, we were talking about position management. So when you're creating new positions, you have to assign a job profile to that position. And you saw attached to that job profile is your comp grade. So if that's set up incorrectly, then when we're creating a job requisition and we're pulling in that position, it's pulling in a comp that's incorrect. So
and
a lot of time will be spent on that.
Have in the job table.
Sure.
Table. So it's a same kind of concept. It's just a little bit of a different approach.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wasn't joking that she's the queen of Workday. As you can see, her title is Queen of Workday. She does a lot of that. So I'm going to show just the last thing, and then we're going to transition to looking at the processes. We want to show you how to hire people and change and do some things like that. So this is the supervisory org that we're looking at for human resources, where Logan is sitting and what other employees I could see here. So we have several members here. I can continue clicking on and seeing more information. Like we talked about superior supervisory orgs to it, subordinate supervisory orgs to add. I can also find out the staffing model that was chosen for the supervisory org, and here right away it says position management. So everyone who sits in the supervisory org will have a chair. And then right over here it's showing me what chairs we have created, but no one is occupying that chairs right now. These are my available chairs that maybe somebody vacant position, or I've created it to recruit new people into that. And then under the roles, I can also see who is assigned what role. So over here it tells me who are my absence partners, who are my benefits partners, and it tells me which roles are inherited and which role is assigned. So the inherited role will be inherited from the top, the organization that sits above human resources, and assigned that I assigned someone specifically for the supervisory org. So if my benefits partner, Maria, is going to be the benefits partner for the organizations above the supervisory org, then she's inheriting the supervisory org and will be approving things that are coming for that. But for administrative assistant for this particular org, I want it to be somebody else, then I would assign it to them at this particular org.
Can we see the supervisory org structure for your population you have here?
Oh, we can click on, just do the visual section.
My understanding is it's based on names of people. That would be who we start to define from Mark Wrighton on down.
Yes. So we could see it here. It starts at the top, right? So over here. So go all the way up. So let me actually find Logan so we start there because visually it'd be easier probably to see that. So we've logged in as Logan, right? So here's Logan sitting right now, and it shows 12. Logan has direct reports to her. If I click on her, it will drill down and take me there. I'm going to go all the way up to see Joy report. Logan reports to Joy. Joy has several direct reports here. Then I can go up and see where Logan's supervisor, Joy, sits. And then in relation to that, who are her peers that she's sitting, who she reports to.
Well, and just a couple quick things. So for those of you who hadn't seen Workday before, the sort of yellow color indicates that this person is also a manager and has direct reports, whereas the blue are individual contributors. Your open positions, so we just looked at an org that had 2 open positions. Those would show, so if we clicked on Joy, there were any open positions in her org, that would show as well. It just wouldn't have, so you can see it on the far side. So you've got headcount, but you don't have anyone hired into that yet.
They would show if you use position management.
Yes. Correct. Because you created a chair, so that chair is available, but it's showing up there for you.
Right, but you wouldn't have vacant positions identified if you don't use position management.
Right, if you use job management, it's more like thinking of an open auditorium and however many people want to come in and sit can come in and sit, but they're not assigned to a specific chair. So that's the reason that position management is so much more popular, because it's so much more visibility and so much more robust reporting for you to have an actual headcount view and other things.
Sorry, you keep saying chair. Do you mean position?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, we were saying when we do training, we speak of tradition of being a chair and only one person can sit in the chair. So it's just something that
Well, we have
talk
chairs.
about.
That's why I'm trying to be mindful.
Okay.
Like we have endowed chairs, we have chairs, department chairs.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah,
you're
we're
trying-
talking about positions.
Position chairs, yeah. We did a demo, like an illustration of that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be clear, because each time we say chair, I'm like, you created a new chair?
Okay, no, I got you. Okay.
A new position.
New position.
Yes, not a title, but really a
If you said seat, if you said seat, I would have been okay.
Okay.
The word
That's good
chair
enough.
was the one that you gotta be mindful of.
Okay, got it.
So I can also click over here and say, don't show me any open seats. I only want to see the ones that are workers occupying right now. And then it could also, I could say, don't show me any contingent workers. I really only want to know who are the employees currently right now occupying the seats that I have in the organization. And this is what it'll give me. So the yellows, I know that they're supervising people. And my blue ones they are managers that don't have direct reports.
And this you could exclude, you could manage to set this up, I'm assuming, could exclude things like postdocs, fellows, graduate students.
You would have whoever you're hiring in that supervisory org, they will all be included here. If they're all using position management, then they will be within that.
Right.
What about the different types of employees?
Yeah, non-employed people will be this interesting conversation.
Yeah, I've seen where they created different supervisory orgs for them, a separate one, so all postdocs are hired into a postdoc supervisory org, so then they're not being mixed up with your other supervisory orgs. That's another way conversation you would have with the leads when you start designing things. If it's reporting is not being clear when they are in the same supervisory org, maybe there's an additional supervisory org is created for non-employees for that department. Yeah, exciting conversations later.
What if you have someone that dual reports?
Matrix reporting, who has reports to one and the other one. So Workday does allow you to show that. I guess in this work it's not showing. So you would have like little lines around it, and it basically telling you matrix reporting, so that person reports to 2 people.
Okay, so you can have that, it's just we don't have an example of it on.
Yeah, just not over here. So I think I'm going to stop over here to make sure we have enough time to get through the end, because I want you guys to get a visual and see the demo of business process.
Reduce the number of dual reports. People have dual reports. I wonder if that wouldn't be good HR practice.
It might inherently happen when we set up the FDM, depending on how you tie cost center to position. It may end up reducing that.
So my partner in crime would take over business process.
Your CIO examples of dual report.
Not anymore. Not the new one.
I think we
That's
should be
part of
solving 2 bosses.
Well, that's part of what we wanted to do in reframing the job, is to let have one boss, because when it works, but it does create the potential for it not to work. It did work for John. Almost always when you have people have dual reports, what happens over time is they really have one report.
So we're at about 10 after 1. We want to at least be able to get through talking through the hire business process, get into the system again, and kind of show you some demos of the hire process. Do we need a quick break, or do we want to press on through? We're going until 2 today. Good. We're good? All right. We're going to press on through then. So I want to just talk through an example of a hire business process. And the underlying message here is that this is configurable, is that this is coming from the system that we were just in, so our fictitious company, Global Modern Services. I've simplified it a little bit, so there could be condition rules that come through as well. But as we were talking about earlier, so business processes, there's always going to be somebody that can initiate. There could be multiple people, multiple roles that could initiate. And then it's going to route through certain steps depending on the rules that are set up. So in this example, an HR partner can initiate a hire. Okay? So from there, we're going to propose compensation. So from that hire, they're, again, hiring. We're going to use the position management concept. So they're hiring into a vacant position. Not included here, a vacant position needs to exist, right? So before we can even initiate a hire, we need to have a vacant position. That can either be created, which is its own business process, or maybe somebody's leaving a position and we're using an existing vacant position. So maybe a compensation partner will propose the compensation for that individual. And then there's a step called change organization assignment. So this is where you will make sure, so supervisory organization is already set, right, because we're hiring somebody into that position that's attached to the supervisory org. But this could be where we assign a cost center. This could be where we assign maybe a region, if we have a region organizations or hierarchy set up. There's a lot of different custom ones that could be created as well. Cost center is a big one that generally we want to make sure is assigned, from the initiation or from when we actually hire that individual before they're actually on board as a worker. There might be an approval for that. So there could be business processes within business processes. So in this example, change organization assignments is its own business process. So it could be done ad hoc as well. But in this case, that step will go to the HR partner and then it'll go to the cost center manager. So again, thinking specifically that we're going to assign this person to a cost center, it's going to go to that manager for approval. Then maybe their Workday account is set up. So you'll see when I go into the system, that's going to be a manual step for today, but that's something that can happen automatically. So the system will create a Workday account for them. You can even have it set up where that new hire will be sent an email. They can have their credentials to be able to log into Workday and actually start their onboarding. Pay group. So it might be routed then to a payroll administrator to assign a pay group for this individual. And then we get to onboarding setup, and we'll see that when we get into the system. So this allows whoever is assigned, and in this example it's the HR partner, then it will actually, this is another sub-business process, it would then route to the manager. You can set up for your new hire helpful information for their first day. So you could put a welcome message, you can indicate helpful people for them to meet. If you want to put in maybe parking information, what time to arrive, dress code, things like that really are just helping that new hire through the onboarding process before their first day. And then it'll go to onboarding, which is its own business process that'll kick off for the new hire.
Some of this can default in, right? Yep. Like for a pay group, for example, that could just default in.
It could, yep.
Be a business process.
Yep. Again, create Workday account, that generally happens automatically as well. Anywhere you see Workday service is something that Workday just does automatically usually.
So, and I'm sorry if I missed this, but so we found the person we want to hire, we sent the offer, they said yes.
Yes.
So in order for them to actually then get access to their onboarding information, some magical thing has to happen so that they actually get an email address. And
yep.
So does that information, that sort of request for let's get somebody set up, throw out of Workday into an IT process, or what happens in that mix there?
So it could vary, but the first step would be on every business process, there's going to be something called a completion step. So it's basically when Workday says, okay, this person really is hired. So that happens usually right before that Workday account is created. And so from there, then there could be integrations set up to, if you've got single sign-on set up, then maybe that integration occurs where they get their Active Directory, email, things like that, and then that notification is pushed out to the new hire, which will then allow them access to Workday even before their start date. So So I mentioned onboarding is its own business process. Again, entirely configurable, and this could change based on the type of worker, right? So we know that hiring a student worker, their onboarding process probably looks a lot different than a faculty member or an administrator. Okay, so onboarding kicks off automatically at the end of the hire process. They could, specific tasks will come to their inbox, so things like updating their personal information, making sure their address and their phone number are correct in the system. Government IDs, so this is adding in their social security number for payroll and tax purposes, completing their federal withholdings, if they've got state withholdings that need to be done, that can occur as well. Managing your payment elections, so that's setting up your direct deposit. Reviewing documents, so any kind of new hire documents can all be set up in the system. If they need to sign confidentiality agreement or some kind of employment agreement, or just some basic information that you want that you give to your new hires, maybe you give them hard copies or you email, they can all be attached and reviewed in the system. Update skills and experience, so we saw earlier worker profile, so if you wanted that task to route to their inbox during onboarding, they could go in and make sure that their worker profile is up to date. Upload a photo, so if you've probably seen we've got photos in our GMS tenant, so they can go and upload a photo. Again, that's its own business process, so there can be approvals on that to make sure that people are uploading photos that are appropriate, of course. Change emergency contacts, complete Form I-9, benefit elections, again, all configurable based on the type of worker that you're hiring as well. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the system. We're going to start from the beginning. So we're going to create a position, we're going to hire an employee, and then I'm going to log in as that employee and go through the onboarding process. We're going to get started. We're going to see how long or how far we get. Hopefully we'll get through the whole process.
As I say, I think we'll get through this, but then maybe jump to reporting after. Okay.
I think that's a great idea. Okay, so I am logged in as Logan. And again, we're in a position management organization, so the first thing I need to do is create a position. Also, I am hiring somebody ad hoc, so I'm going to create the position ad hoc and I'm going to hire them. A lot of this will come through recruiting, right? So your position still needs to be created, but maybe you'll create a job requisition. That requisition will be posted. We'll go through the whole candidate application process, and then we'll actually go in and hire the person. But you have the ability to do it either way. And of course, create position would essentially stay the same. So I'm just going to type in create position. And first thing I need to do is select a supervisory organization. This is defaulting to one of the organizations that I manage. I don't want to hire into that one. I actually am going to hire into the human resources organization.
So this is an example of kind of the reports that are inherently built in. So you see, even as they're starting the process, you're getting a look at what other current positions are open, and that sort of thing happens within all of the pages.
All right, so anything that's marked with a star, of course, is required. So I need a job posting title. So I'm going to say we're going to hire an administrative assistant. I am going to go ahead and just put actually going to put WashU on here. Number of positions, I'm creating 1. And then I'm selecting the hiring restrictions, right? So the actual attributes of that position. So first thing I need is the availability date. I'm going to say it's available today. And I'm going to say the earliest hire date is today because we're hiring this person pretty quickly. And then we've got job family and job profile. So we talked about this just a minute ago. Job family, all configurable. You can also have job family groups, which is then just a higher level that you can trickle down into this job family architecture, so to speak. So these are the various job family groups that are currently set up. Okay. I could go ahead and select human resources, and then it's going to show me here all the different job profiles for that job family. So these are already set up within that organization, or within that job family. I could also, instead of adding a job family, if I know the job profile, I could just type it in right here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and select it. And you'll see, right when I selected it, my job description populated. So job description was built on that job profile. So as soon as I selected it, all that information populated.
That's like helpful to standardize something, so when your applicants are looking at positions, then you have some of a consistency across the board, that you're not having administrative assistant in Department A doing very complex things and an administrative assistant in another department doing very basic things. So you could still give them an opportunity to add and remove some things, but at least it also gives the managers like a starting point of what the position and description is going to look like.
And just a little behind the scenes look at Workday. So we're talking about, they have that red star there, it's required by Workday. It's required for everybody, we can't change that. But any other field, if WashU wanted to require it, it wouldn't put a red asterisk next to it, but we could require that field be entered before you hit submit. And if somebody tries to hit submit without, they would get a warning saying you still have to populate the worker type before you can move forward. So we can't add the asterisks. And this is sometimes confusing during training because people think if it's required, why doesn't it say it? But we can still require certain fields be entered based on your business requirements.
That's something we can tell them Workday requirement versus WashU requirement.
Right.
And then there'll be 2 alerts we could do. One is the red one where you can't submit without that, and we can do more of a soft alert, something like yellow, orange color, telling them that you're kind of going outside of the parameters, maybe for the salary or something. Just be aware of that, but they can still complete and submit it.
And you can't do any denotation, so you can't do the asterisk, you can't do any denotation at all for the WashU requirements?
We can put in help text.
Yes.
And in some processes, they have what's called guided tours, where if you were over on the right-hand side, like where it says location, and you hovered over that, it would tell you specifically what you wanted entered. And then there's standard help text that will be developed throughout.
And I'll show you help text in just a minute.
Could you change the labels at all?
The
job description, but parentheses required or something?
Some of the things can be changed and some cannot. Yeah, the functional team would have to review that with you. I don't believe that that is one that you could add required. I think it could just draw a warning. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and select a location. You've seen me use some of these drop-down lists quite a few times. So you can either, once you click in one, and you can just click anywhere in it to pull up the drop-down options, there's usually lots of different ways you can search to find the value that you're looking for. You can always just type in there as well. Okay, so oftentimes I type when I know exactly what I'm looking for, but especially in the beginning, you probably don't always know exactly, where to find your option. Time type, so full-time or part-time, so this is going to be a full-time. And then worker type, we talked about this earlier, so you've got contingent worker or employee. And then within those, you've got subtypes. So this is an employee. And then here are my different subtypes. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose regular.
And you can add here if you have other subtypes, benefits.
Configurable.
Yeah, configurable. So if it's not enough options, we can add more.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and submit this. Okay. And I can see what happens next. So up next, so I'm logged in as Logan. Remember, in this example, in Global Modern Services, Logan is all-powerful in a lot of ways. So I just initiated this as an HR partner, which Logan is, and now requesting the default compensation for the position is routing to the compensation partner, which Logan is as well. We understand that's, generally you're probably going to have a couple different people, but that also just saves us from logging in and out as a million people during this process. But this screen would show up regardless. So if HR partner was different from Logan, I just submitted that position initiation as the HR partner, and I can see, oh, okay, now it's going to Logan. So Logan's going to get an inbox task to go in and request the default compensation. I know that if for whatever reason that position isn't done in the next couple days, I can pick up the phone and call Logan and ask what the holdup is.
Can you click into the details and process?
It also shows, yeah.
Another way you can see into the business process is by clicking, so I just expanded this details and process section, and you can click this process tab, and you can see the process history. So I can see the date and time that Logan initiated the process. I can see that right now it's awaiting action by Logan McNeil, and I stand corrected. I thought it was going to her because she was the comp partner, but really it's going to her as the HR partner. And then if there's additional processes, I can click this remaining processes button. In this case, there's only two steps in this business process. But if there were more, I would see the rest of the different steps in the process, who they would eventually route to, meaning the role, not the person until it actually routes.
This is a great way to know accountability, where things are, and if somebody says, oh, it didn't get done because you didn't do it, but it's actually sitting in their inbox awaiting action. And making sure you could nudge people, ask them to log in and complete it. Visibility is given to everyone. You could see that. If you initiated it, you could still see where it's being held up.
All right, so I can go to Logan's inbox. She should have an inbox task for that compensation step. Oops. And here it is. So default compensation for my administrative assistant position.
I would have to leave in a few minutes.
Sure.
So and rather than Mark and I chit-chatting on the side, I would rate, this strikes me as all eminently reasonable. I mean, like, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it will take a lot of things we do, tighten them up, automate them. Our data will be infinitely better because we'll instead remember to do things rather than forget to. We'll get rid of a lot of paper. Ellen, you wrote me a note about macro level issues. I guess there's a few issues about how we set up security, and there are a few issues here. Doesn't seem to me there are very many macro level issues here.
Not in this, per se. This is a system for managing hiring and onboarding. But as we start to talk, I mean, what I hear folks saying is, do we want our managers to be managing in a different way? And if so, what does that look like, and how does the system help it, or how does the system not, so we know where to fill the gap?
Okay.
And that is the kind of macro question that's up
So
there.
the questions that I would ask is, what are the competing versions of different? What are the alternatives in different? And that's the question I would ask is, can we shape what the alternatives are?
Yeah, I mean, I think there probably is a short list of some things that we know represent a difference in practice, or maybe a difference in what managers can and can't do today, or even what their people who process things can or can't do today. They'll all have answers, right? But there are some conversations that I think we should probably try and set aside some time just to talk through what are the differences. And you'll hear some of them tomorrow. You know, sourcing is a big difference. And perhaps how...
Why sourcing? Say more.
Well, it's tomorrow's conversation, I suspect, and now I'm in Amy's territory, but my understanding is like today, where we would attach account numbers directly to each job, that framework will be different. We'll still allocate costs to accounts, but it won't work like it works today. So it's just a difference.
This seems to me, and I've now been listening for 2.5 hours, it seems to me like this is the railroad that I'm familiar with, and this is a very useful tool for managing that railroad differently. This doesn't feel to me like a different railroad.
Well, so one thing, for example, we spent a little bit of time talking about is how we would handle people like our fellows, postdocs, and grad students that are paid stipends. And there are, sounds like answers, you know, to make sure that that stuff is still in the system. But one thing we don't know, as an example, we haven't had a chance to talk, is how much of that is can be plugged in rather than people
But that's
choosing.
not a philosophical issue. That's a peculiar issue.
Yeah, it's peculiar.
That's a peculiar technical issue about an unusual group of people who cause peculiar, unusual tech. But that's not a kind of philosophical issue. Amy, were you going to say something?
Well, I just think philosophically, you know, so some of the things that the questions that Dedrick and I were asking earlier, you know, can we see how many transactions employee A is doing versus employee B?
Right.
Can we do these? And I don't think managers they haven't had the data probably to be able to do that. And I don't think they're used to doing that. I'm looking at you, but I don't think we're real good at telling people they're not performing well. So,
yeah, actually, reports can do a lot of things. You know, people can get that kind of data if they ask for
But those
it.
are all unambiguously good things to have that data available.
no, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just,
Right.
you asked the question, what is it that we're thinking about that people could be questioning? There's going to be, I think, a lot of, as we've talked about, a lot of change management, a lot of training that's going to need to get done. This is all good things, they're not bad things.
Yeah,
I haven't seen anything in here.
So for this is, again, HR example, just because you give a performance review or you're documenting performance doesn't mean that we're necessarily also developing talent and the manager's developing talent. The system, that's something that we need. We've talked about that we need to do that, but the system isn't going to do that for us. It will just show, did you do the performance evaluation? Did you not do the performance evaluation? Are they performing well? I think some of those.
Yes.
Okay, so let me try responding to that.
Okay.
We have a 5-year HR roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that we should be able to really simply do is to say, how does Workday help us get to that 5-year roadmap? Where does it help? Where, if anything, does it hurt? My guess is it won't hurt anywhere. What is irrelevant? What do we have to do to supplement Workday because it's not a Workday product? That seems to me to be a very good workshop, not a very good agenda item among 6 agenda items on the executive committee.
Right.
But it seems to be either a full executive committee or a 2-hour workshop that goes through that.
Right.
I mean, that seems to be an evidently reasonable thing to do.
Well, we also did these strategy maps, right? There's one for HR and there's one for finance, and they're almost final. The executive committee needs to bless them. But seeing how that lines up with Workday, how that lines up with the overall strategy map, because I think that will provide some clarity too.
And I'll add one thing.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Judge.
I'll add one sort of philosophical thing that is, we're not going to solve it here, but I'm hopeful for. There are examples where we have grad students and postdocs who are, postdocs in particular, who are paid out of sources of funds for whom IP is generated. And later we will have the generators of those funds say, can you tell us, who, I want to license this, can you tell us what resources we're using developing this? We actually had this case happen where Thanksgiving of last year, we had a major pharmaceutical company leave us because we, at the last minute, said, oh, by the way, there's a postdoc that was on this foundation funding. We don't like their IP terms, but we only discovered that by accident. And that's getting be more of an issue than less of an issue. So philosophically, it is, we don't track well that kind of information for postdocs. It's not clear where we can track that information. And I don't know if we're even planning to track it now, but from the perspective of the requirements for us from IP, it has to be a part of the conversation. So I'm looking at that areaness to say, is this, when we look at postdocs and the history of them, if I'm able to say, yes, Bright Horizons funding, these are the 3 people that were funded on it forever and ever, amen, it makes a difference to us.
Yeah,
real dollars to the university.
Yeah. One comment too, again, that just, I think we've heard some of this, but we don't know enough yet to know how big of a deal it is that some work may change where it gets done. Some work may not be in central HR today, but maybe now it needs to be, or vice versa, I don't know. It sounds like even some shifting between IT and HR, so we just need to figure that out.
I was about to say something. Yeah, this seems to me to be all perfectly rational decisions.
Yeah.
Like, we got to decide, is there a way to keep track of graduate students' IP without creating so much work for everybody that it's not worth it? And you deal with it on an exception basis. But that's a question you have on all of these systems. That's been the question in Epic, right? Which is, we want to do all this stuff for research purposes. When do you load it up so much that your clinicians say, no mas? But I guess what I would find really helpful is to, at least at HR, is to look at the strategy map against the 5-year plan and just be very clear. Not going to solve all the problems.
No.
I mean, it's a processing system. It's not going to solve the problem of making our pools more diverse for certain jobs. I mean, it ain't going to do that. That's what you said. It's an accounting system on the finance side. So part of this is getting really clear on what problems does this solve, what doesn't, and do we want to use this as an excuse to solve other problems, or do we want to put them on the longer term game, right?
And absolutely, and Workday on the surface is not, I mean, a lot of this is going to be in nuance and exceptions, like how we do things today and how we want to work in the future. It's not the system itself.
All right, I've learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank
Learned
you.
a lot. Amy and I need to be at the same meeting at 2 o'clock at the medical school.
You need a ride?
No, I'm picking up Holden. That way I know he'll come too.
I'm going to finish creating a position, and I'm going to go ahead and initiate a hire. I'm going to try it to switch back over to Love about 1:45 so we can see a couple reports, and then we'll finish up at 2 if that sounds okay. So if you remember, we initiated the position, so I initiated as Logan, and then it's coming for to add in the default compensation. So a lot of this information comes through from the job profiles. We were talking about earlier, when you set up your job profiles, you could set up compensation grades and compensation grade profiles that basically just will show what the range could be for that position. So in this example, this is an administrative assistant position. It's coming through with a pay range already on there. It's an hourly compensation package and an hourly grade. So for salaries, this could show a salary range. You could have the compensation package. Of course, you could have multiple compensation packages. The grade, which would show you that range, and grade profile. So grade profile, you can essentially continue to narrow down your compensation grade by like a location. So maybe you're paying people, if you had people in multiple locations, maybe you're paying them different, based on that location. Usually more of a concern when we're thinking about nationwide, and we've got different cost of living within different areas of the nation. Right? So I'm basically just reviewing this information that came through from the job profile. Everything looks good to me, so I'm going to go ahead and click approve. You will see a screen just like this when it comes time to actually hire the individual. So that's when we're actually going to go in, put in the exact salary amount. We can add in bonus information, commission, things like that, if that was something that needed to be added.
Well, in this case, there isn't actually an hourly rate assigned, so you would edit it to add in the hourly rate, right? Because it's not, yeah.
There we go. We'll just say she gets $15 an hour. And again, there would be an opportunity to adjust that when it comes time to propose compensation for the actual individual that we're hiring. Okay. You can see merit, this populated based on that job profile. If there was bonus or anything else to add, that would be on there as well. Again, we'll have another opportunity to review this once we actually hire the person.
Is that just informational, like when you have a bonus at this stage, is that just information, not really what's going to drive what they might actually get paid as a bonus?
Yeah, so if you had, maybe it's a 5% bonus, that annually for certain positions, you could set that up at the job profile level and it would show up here. You also have what Workday calls primary compensation basis. Some would call it target income. So once we actually put in a salary, it's going to take the salary and whatever that bonus might be, and it'll tell you, okay, your target income, bonus plus salary is this amount of money.
But if you had bonus plans that were, say, handled monthly or quarterly, and they're productivity driven, and so the amount may vary, you wouldn't set it up here, you would just...
This is guidelines, because
Yeah.
this is actually on the seat itself, not on the person. So when you would hire in a person, that's when you customize their actual compensation.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so Workday gives us nice little green check marks when a process is fully completed. So when all steps in the business processes have gone to completion, basically for me this means my position is created. So we like to see green check marks. The position exists, now I can go ahead and hire my employee. So I'm going to use the search bar again and I'm going to type in hire employee. And remember, I'm hiring ad hoc. So we realize oftentimes this is going to come through recruiting. Some of the screens are going to look the same, and I'll try to explain what you might see if you were coming through recruiting. So it's going to start out similarly. I need to choose the supervisory organization, because remember, positions are created within supervisory orgs, and then people are hired within supervisory orgs. So this was human resources. And then earlier when we were using that search bar to search a name, we saw some pre-hire records. And Angela was mentioning every employee will also have a pre-hire record. So when they come through from recruiting, they're considered a pre-hire as soon as they hit that offer stage of the recruiting process, and then they become a worker once the hire process completes. So I can, if I have existing pre-hires in the system, I could choose existing pre-hire. If it was a former worker, their worker record, of course, is already in Workday, so I can pull their former worker information. In this example, I'm going to create a new pre-hire. And here's where we have a guided tour available. So guided tours are available on select processes in Workday, and this will give you that field by field level guidance. So if I say show me, I get these little question marks that pop up. And if I click on them, it's just going to give me some information about that field. Theoretically, these have not been set up. As you can see, it's all configurable. So this is something that we can actually go in, type in exactly what you would want it to be. So, in this field, you would put in, you would indicate if we're allowing duplicate names, within this organization. In this field, we're going to indicate the country that the worker is going to be hired in, things like that. Guided tours are not available on all processes. So every release that Workday has, there's usually a couple more that they add. Help text, which I'll show you as soon as we get to a stage that has help text, that's available in a lot more processes. And that's just static text at the top of a screen. So I think we talked about this earlier when we talked about required fields that don't have the red asterisk. So this is where we could have in here, this field is required.
For the pre-hire and the existing worker. So what do you do when you don't convert all of your data over to Workday for rehires? How do you know it's a rehire?
Yeah, so oftentimes when that happens, usually there's still people that have access to the old system where, for view only or reporting purposes.
So it's just a question you ask on the hire?
Yeah.
On the application or
yeah,
where it just says,
have you worked? Yeah. You might have here and there a few, but for the most part, the conversion should catch for the most. Like what you've had in your current system that would be brought into Workday. But if not, then you would ask them. And then if there's certain policies for years when they worked and you want to track service dates, and based on that, maybe they're more eligible to certain things because they've been here, and universities have so many different policies on that, that certainly that's something could be taken into consideration and then figured out in the onboarding process how service dates can be backdated. Because I know you said you had a lot of grandfathered plans and things like that.
We have a lot of things that are based on service dates.
So I'm just going to finish filling out this pre-hire page. So again, I'm just initiating a hire. I'm creating a new pre-hire. So I gave it a first name, a last name. I'm going to click over on the contact information tab. Workday always requires one piece of contact information. Generally, it would be a phone or an email address. So I'll go ahead and click email. I'm going to say WashU at test. Actually, let's use example. And then a email type. So we'll say that's a home email. You'll see there's a lot of other information I could add. For sake of time, I'm just going to add what's required, which is just one piece of contact information. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now that pre-hire is in the system. Again, I see there's a guided tour here as well. I can choose to ignore it if I don't want to use it. I'm going to select the hire date, which we're hiring them today. I'm going to select the reason. So this is a new hire, and we're filling a vacancy.
Reason is also typically what drives things in business processes. Depending on what reason you're using, whatever the process is, that reason can then determine workflow as well.
So the position, since it was already built, I can see it here. I've got options, put positions with job requisitions and without. So we didn't create a job requisition, we just created everything ad hoc. So without, here is the position I just built. So here's my admin assistant. And when I select it, the rest of the information populates since I set it up on the position. So if we think to what might be a more typical example, which would be somebody coming through from recruiting, the initiation step, so once the recruiter moves that candidate to ready for hire is what Workday calls it. So that means they've gone through, they've accepted the offer, we've negotiated if we needed to, but we've got a confirmed offer, candidate has accepted, they've gone through a background check process if that's a requirement, everything cleared, and we're ready to move them to ready for hire. That would initiate an inbox task in whoever we set up as the initiator of a hire process. So in this example, it would be Logan as the HR partner. So Logan would get an inbox task, and it would look very similar to this, because this information is going to pull through from recruiting. So a hire date would have been discussed, so that would have been in there. All of the position information would populate because that came through from the position that was on the job requisition.
It makes things go much easier when it comes through recruiting, because then a lot of information already comes through that. So it's mostly kind of verify, validate, review versus like typing it. But there still will be situations when you will be hiring someone ad hoc that recruiting wouldn't be posted. And for some positions, maybe non-benefits eligible would be, it's okay for them not to post, depending on what your policies are.
So when I click submit, again, this looks similar to creating a position. Now we're actually hiring a worker, and it's going to go to Logan again to propose compensation. And if I click open, that screen is going to look very similar. So this is coming through from the position. I had already put in a proposed base pay. I've got my guidelines, my pay range, my hourly plan, that merit populated from the job profile. Everything looked good to me. I could have adjusted that pay rate. So maybe we put 15 on the position when we created it. Maybe we're going to bring them in at $18 an hour. I could have updated it there. I'm going to submit. And then we get the change organization assignments. I'm just going to do this task, and then I think we'll switch over and talk about reports. I think everybody's interested in reports, right? Want to make sure that we can demo at least one or two of those. So organization assignment. So this is, we talked about this just a little bit ago. Supervisory organization was on the position, so that can't change. But other organizations could be required, again, based on what we decide to set up for you or what you all decide. So company, we're going to talk a lot more about companies tomorrow when we talk about finance. But a company essentially is a legal entity. So could have, it could be as complex a structure as we need it to be here. You can see some of this defaulted based on the job profile already. So it came through from the position. Cost center, that's of course the big one. So this might be one, if it doesn't default, maybe this is one we need to have assigned. Region, if you just want to track regions, then we, again, this came through from the position or from the job profile, but we could assign it here as well. And then you've got a lot of other ones. So some of these could be custom organizations. Organizations essentially are ways to track your employees. Okay? So supervisory organization, of course, we all understand that management hierarchy, but if we needed to group people by division or by region, a cost center, I think, again, where's my money coming from, right? Where's my salary coming from? That's the essential premise of a cost center. But some of the rest of these really is how are we grouping our workers in different ways.
This is where you would tie in academic appointments to the academic organization of the university, which could be very different from the cost center or the HR reporting line. We could have academic associations. Is this where that happens, or is that a different?
No, it's a separate process.
Fine.
Academic appointment. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
So we create the position, get them hired and stuff, and we would add an academic appointment, and we'll track really specific details for that academic appointment that are not related to the hire. They might have the same information, the same date of the hire with the same date of the academic appointment, but it's a different VP.
As long as it's there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch it back to Love. So I did submit that organization assignments task. So I can see next Joy Banks, who's the cost center manager. So now Joy is going to approve this hire. And this is actually part of that sub-process. So the change organization assignment sub-process, based on whoever was that cost center manager, they're now going to get that approval step. So they get to review that hire as well. I think there's a couple more steps that set up onboarding we talked about, and then eventually onboarding would trigger for the new hire. But any questions about the hire process? right.
I'm just going to do right away a couple reports.
okay.
So we can spend probably days in reporting because it's really lots of information analytics that Workday gives us, lots of interesting details that we can take a look at and drive decisions from that. And I think a lot of higher institutions in particular love Workday because they can actually get that data in their fingertips, which is sometimes it's hard to get that because a lot of things are paper or it's in legacy systems that are not allowing you to pull that data and information together. So with Workday, we have a lot more ability to pull that information once it's all there. The reports that we have, standard reports that are Workday delivered, that we're able to just kind of utilize what we have, and then you would also be able to do customized reports. So I'm going to still stay as Logan and show you one of the reports that's already standard reports in Workday, that it's not customable, it's not something we created specifically for this, but I think it's a helpful information that still Logan can use as she's making decisions and determining. So in the search box, I'm going to type open positions. Hi. And as I'm typing this, you can see I'm already getting a list of options for me. So I'm going to take a look at open positions report because I'm really interested to see how many open positions do I have in human resources department today. And you can put whatever organization you would like to take a look at, and I'm getting my report now. I'm able to see what open positions I have. I have 29 open positions that's currently right now in the human resources organization. That means I have 29 open seats, and I need to determine if I want to close some of these seats or if I need to make a decision that we're going to be posting them or what's happening in the recruitment process, maybe if there are requisitions related to them. I can do different things with this. I can actually filter through by clicking here and do more searching. I can give me specifically only the ones that have a word manager in them or a specific value that I'm interested in looking at, and I can do that in every single column over here from left to the right. And then I can also download it as an Excel. I could export it to Excel and do more data lookups. I could do pivot tables. I could send it to someone as an email. I can come up with some charts and things like that. So it's pretty quick and easy to download it. Drops it down there. And right there I have my Excel document with this information that Workday just delivered to me within seconds. So I could save it and send it if I wanted to. I can also click print and print this in a PDF format. So it would be also an easy way to want to send it to someone. I can export it to worksheets. I can also over here select to filter grid data, and that would be easier for me to see maybe what columns I want to add and what I want to filter and go with that. So it's allowing to do that for me. I can determine if I want to look at specific columns and remove some of these columns if I'm not interested in any of that data. I can also expand and have a bigger view and review information maybe in the meeting, so it's easier to see that, and drill down into more details on each one of these tabs or go directly into this position. So again, we see this little Twinkie there at the end, right? That allows me maybe to take an action on that particular position. So that's one of the reports to take a look and find open positions. And it was, there we go, we'll go back. Easy for me to find it. I just typed open position and right away it came up, and then Logan has access to this report, so I was able to get that information. Any questions about this particular report or just in general about this function of reporting?
On the search, can you just type reports and see different categories?
You can get, let's see, I could type here all custom reports, right? It's coming up. It might take longer to get, but here I'm getting some of the custom reports that have been created, and you can see that some of them are advanced in what data source and category and more details about it. And this is something like, I think there will be a follow-up session right on reporting that somebody will go over on data values and things that go in reporting, what makes one custom versus advanced or standard.
But you can just search like all reports in Workday that you have access to. It'd be a long list, but you could do it that way. Yeah.
Can you make a workbook out of?
You can save reports to your favorites. Probably the easiest way to do it.
Over here I have a worklet too. I do have a worklet report. And then over here I'm saving the ones that I run often. You can also schedule reports and have them be delivered to your inbox. If I want to see on a regular basis one-time payments that have been approved or scheduled, I could schedule that, and on a regular basis then I would receive that and it'll give me the information about one-time payments.
I'm thinking what's going to be easiest for us to get familiar with what reports are there in the first place. Once we know it's there, I think we'll be able to find it next week and deal with it. But kind of knowing what's there in the first place.
Making like an
And I'd have to
inventory.
scan the waterfront to figure that out.
Yeah. That's probably part of the training would be like a list of inventory of reports and what they're for and what you're looking for in that information. Yeah. But in my worklets and the reports, as you could see, I have quite a bit number of reports. I could be here all day running reports and looking at the data. Like I said, we could be here weeks looking at the information, but it's there.
And that's part of usually what we do at Go Live Communications too, where we target, these are the top 10 reports for this security role and this security role, and that's part of our communicating when we first go live as well.
I think one of the different visuals that we'll have to make sure that we capture in training is recognizing when you're actually in a, I guess you call it a worklet, if it's just like recruiting or if it's job management or whatever some of the other benefits or whatever it is, that there's reporting that doesn't look like reporting when you're in there. You know what I mean? Like you can click and you don't have to go to a reporting module to get reporting.
Right. Like we said in recruiting, like when you click, it's just giving you some of the information that you can get into. If I go into my, is this what you're referring to?
Yeah. You know, we don't necessarily recognize that as reporting.
We say sometimes everything is a report.
Yeah.
Because when you click on something like this, you're here to maybe perform actions, but it's a report.
Right. So like if you click into the 6 active candidates, if you could
get
drill
that.
down into all of that, and again, then you could take the reaction off of somebody with a related action. All of it's drillable.
And anytime you see anything in this grid format, you're pretty much always going to see that option to export to Excel. So essentially anything that you see in a grid like that is also a report.
I can print it, download it. So now we have only 3 minutes left, so if there are any burning questions that we can answer in the last 3 minutes, we would love to answer them. Was this helpful? Did this meet your needs?
I think it was a little too granular at certain points. So, I mean, you were looking for feedback. So I think the general idea that, once you started getting into this is how it looks, we get, I think you kind of made the point that we kind of get it. So I think given that this was supposed to be executive committee 101, I think spending a little more time on some of the bigger ideas. And reports is a really big idea, so I probably wouldn't have put that at the very end because you are going to lose people just competing meetings and so on. So I learned a lot, and I'm glad, and it's really good to get in the system and see it. That would just be some of my feedback.
Very helpful feedback. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Who's gonna be here tomorrow? Just let me know if we're getting the same group of people. Okay. Okay. That's good to know. Tomorrow.
Anything to help us with those directional decisions and what it means for us to move in that direction. If you could show us, examples of that.
I think that's helpful. Yeah, we can move up reporting certainly for tomorrow, but also since it's the same population, we can also skip we had thought about doing navigation and other stuff we might need to repeat, so we'll adjust our agenda to make sure we're not doing that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you more often in the future. Can't wait.
Thank you all for coming.